She ran into the wrong room that night, barefoot, bleeding, and hunted. What she found wasn't safety. It was a man who could destroy her with a gesture, who ruled through violence and silence. But when their eyes met beneath that table, something shifted. He didn't expose her. He didn't turn her away. He chose her. And that choice would unravel everything she thought she knew about power, fear, and freedom. If you want to see how far a broken woman can rise when the world's most dangerous man decides to rebuild her, stay until the end. Hit that like button, comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels, and let's dive into the fire together. The marble was cold against Alara's bare feet. She wasn't supposed to be here, not in this hallway, not in this building, not breathing this rarefied air that smelled like expensive cigars and older money. Her lungs burned. The silk of her torn evening gown clung to her ribs, damp with sweat, and something else she didn't want to name. Blood, maybe. Hers or Victor's, she couldn't tell anymore. Behind her, voices, his voice. Find her. 2 words. Calm, controlled, and absolutely certain. Victor Hale didn't shout. He never had to. Men who controlled empires through strategic cruelty didn't raise their voices. They lowered the temperature of entire rooms until everyone else started shivering. Alara's hand shot out, grabbing the first door handle she reached. Locked. The next one. Same. Her fingers were shaking so badly she could barely grip the brass. Third door, it turned. She slipped inside and shut it behind her with a click that sounded like a gunshot in her ears. The room was darker than the hallway, lit only by amber pendant lights hanging over a massive table. Her eyes adjusted slowly, shapes emerging from shadow. Leather chairs. Glasses half full of amber liquid. And men. 6 of them, maybe 7, seated around that table like generals planning a war. They'd all stopped talking the moment she entered. Now they were staring at her, this wild-eyed woman in a ruined designer dress, barefoot and panting, who just interrupted something she clearly had no business witnessing. Alara's survival instinct, the one that had kept her breathing through 3 years of Victor's particular brand of love, kicked in hard and fast. She dropped, straight down, onto her hands and knees, and crawled under the table. It was a stupid plan, childish. The kind of thing you did when you were 6 and thought the monster couldn't find you if you couldn't see it. But her body had made the choice before her brain caught up. And now here she was, pressed against the central support column, trying to make herself smaller than physically possible. Above her, silence. Then, a voice, low, measured, with an edge like a blade wrapped in velvet. Gentlemen, we'll continue this tomorrow. Sir, we haven't finished. Tomorrow. The word didn't get louder. It didn't need to. Chairs scraped against hardwood. Footsteps moved toward the door, unhurried but purposeful. She counted them leaving. 5, 6, 7. The door closed. Silence again, thicker this time. Alara's heart was doing something arrhythmic and painful against her sternum. She could feel it in her throat, her wrists, behind her eyes. She'd stopped breathing without meaning to. Then, movement, not away from the table, toward it. A pair of shoes entered her line of sight. Black leather, Italian, probably worth more than the car Victor had bought her for their anniversary, the one he'd keyed himself 2 weeks later during an argument about whether she'd smiled too long at a waiter. The shoes stopped, right in front of her hiding spot. You can come out now. The voice matched the shoes, expensive, controlled, and absolutely, unmistakably dangerous. Alara didn't move. Or, the voice continued, almost conversational, you can stay under my table, but if you're planning to make a habit of it, I should probably know your name. Something about the tone, not kind, not cruel, just stating facts, made her look up. The man standing above her was younger than she'd expected. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark hair, darker eyes, the kind of face that photographs well but in person carried something the camera couldn't quite capture. Authority? Maybe. Or the particular stillness that came from knowing you were the most dangerous thing in any room you entered. He was looking down at her with an expression she couldn't read. Not angry, not amused. Curious, perhaps, the way someone might look at an unexpected chess move. Her voice came out broken. She tried again. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt a meeting worth approximately $40 million. He tilted his head slightly. No, I imagine you didn't plan that. Alara's fingers dug into the carpet. Please, please, I just need to hide. He said it matter-of-factly. Then he did something that stopped her spiraling thoughts completely. He pulled out a chair and sat down. Not at the head of the table where he'd obviously been sitting before. Right there, in front of her, blocking the door from view, creating a barrier between her and whatever she was running from. From whom? He asked. What? Hiding. From whom? She stared at him. This man who'd just dismissed what sounded like half the criminal underground of the eastern seaboard, so he could sit and have a conversation with a stranger hiding under his furniture. My husband, she whispered. Ah. He reached for something on the table, a glass of scotch, amber liquid catching the light. He took a slow sip, considering. And does your husband make a habit of chasing you through buildings that don't belong to him? He thinks everything belongs to him, including you. It wasn't a question. Alara felt something crack in her chest. She wanted to deny it, to defend herself, to explain that it was more complicated than that. But she was so tired of complicated, so tired of explaining, so tired. Yes, she said. The man nodded slowly, like she'd just confirmed something he'd already suspected. He set his glass down with a soft click. What's your name? Alara. Alara. He said it like he was testing the weight of it. I'm Adrian. I know who you are. That got the barest hint of a smile. Do you? Adrian Cade. The name tasted like smoke and steel on her tongue. You own half the city, the half that isn't on any official maps. 3/4, he corrected mildly. I've expanded since the last census. Despite everything, the terror, the exhaustion, the absolute insanity of her current situation, Alara felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in her throat. She choked it back down. I'm sorry, she said again. I'll go. I just need... The door burst open. Alara's entire body went rigid. She knew those footsteps, had learned to read them like a seismograph, measuring the weight and speed to predict what kind of storm was coming. Cade. Victor's voice filled the room like spilled poison. I apologize for the intrusion, but my wife seems to have wandered into your establishment. Bit of a misunderstanding at dinner. You know how women get. Alara couldn't see him from under the table, but she didn't need to. She could picture him perfectly. The manufactured charm, the smile that never reached his eyes, the casual way he'd smooth his tie while cataloging every exit and weapon in the room. Adrian didn't stand, didn't even turn around. I'm afraid you have me at a disadvantage, he said, voice utterly neutral. I don't recall inviting you into my private office. My apologies. Victor's footsteps moved closer. Victor Hale, Hale Industries. We've met before at the Cordova benefit last spring. Have we? It wasn't a question, and it clearly wasn't agreement. I'm sure you understand, Victor continued, his voice taking on that edge Alara knew too well, the one that came right before his patience ran out. She's not well. Anxiety issues. Sometimes she gets confused, runs off. I'm just here to take her home where she'll be safe. The word safe hit Alara like a fist. She must have made a sound, small, involuntary, because Adrian's gaze flicked down to her for just a fraction of a second. Then he looked back at Victor. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about, Adrian said. His tone hadn't changed, but something in the room had. The temperature, maybe. The air pressure. There's no one here but me and my scotch, and we were having a very pleasant conversation before you interrupted. Silence. Alara could feel Victor processing this, running calculations. He was smart enough to recognize power when he saw it, and Adrian Cade wasn't someone you pushed, but he was also arrogant enough to think he could navigate this, could find the right combination of words to get what he wanted. Perhaps you haven't noticed, Victor said carefully, but there are shoes under your table. Women's shoes, silver heels, custom Valentino. I bought them for my wife 3 months ago. Alara's blood went cold. She'd kicked them off somewhere in the hallway, hadn't she? Or had she been wearing them when she crawled under here? She couldn't remember. Adrian didn't look down to check. His eyes stayed locked on something in the middle distance, probably Victor's face, though Alara couldn't see from her angle. How unfortunate, Adrian said, that you bought your wife such uncomfortable shoes she had to abandon them. Perhaps you should reconsider your gift-giving strategy. Mr. Cade, however, Adrian's voice cut through whatever Victor was about to say with surgical precision. If I were to find someone hiding in my office, hypothetically speaking, I would have to ask myself why. Why would someone choose to hide under my table instead of going to the authorities, or seeking help from any number of more official sources? He paused, lifting his glass again. And I would have to conclude that they had a very good reason. The kind of reason that would make me extremely interested in ensuring their safety, interested enough to make it a personal priority. The threat was delivered so smoothly it took Alara a moment to catch it, but Victor heard it immediately. She could tell by the quality of his silence. I see, Victor said finally. And if I were to suggest that you might be harboring someone who legally belongs, be very careful, Adrian interrupted, his voice dropping half an octave, with your next words. Because I have lawyers who get paid obscene amounts of money to ensure that words like belong and harboring never apply to anything I choose to do. And I have friends who don't use lawyers at all. Another pause. Am I making myself clear? Alara heard Victor's breathing change, saw his shadow shift on the floor. He was weighing options, running scenarios. Victor always had a plan B, usually a plan C through M as well. Crystal, Victor said, but you should know, she's not what she seems. She's a liar. Manipulative. She'll tell you stories, make you think. Mr. Hale. Adrian set his glass down with a sound like a gavel. You're boring me, and I have a strict policy about people who bore me in my own office. Which is, they don't get invited back. The words hung there, sharp and final. Victor's shadow moved toward the door, stopped. This isn't over. No, Adrian agreed. I imagine it isn't. But it's over for tonight. And if I see you in this building again without an invitation, I'll be significantly less polite about expressing my displeasure. Footsteps. The door opening. Then, just before it closed, Victor's voice, low and poisonous. She'll come back to me. She always does. The door clicked shut. Alara stayed frozen under the table, her whole body locked in a rigor of tension and terror, and something else she couldn't name. Her ears were ringing. Her hands had gone numb. Adrian remained seated, perfectly still, for what felt like an hour but was probably 30 seconds. Then he spoke, his voice returning to that almost conversational tone. He's gone. Alara couldn't move. Alara, he's gone. She managed to pull in a breath. It felt like swallowing glass. He's right, she whispered. I always go back. Why? The question was so simple it almost broke her. Because I don't have anywhere else to go. Because he controls everything. My accounts, my mother's medical bills, the apartment lease. Because every time I tried to leave before, he found me. Because I'm tired and scared and I don't know how to be anything except his wife. She was crying now, hot tears tracking through the dust on her face, and she hated it. Hated being weak in front of this man who controlled empires and dismissed husbands like they were mosquitoes. Hated that even here, even now, she was still the broken thing Victor had spent 3 years creating. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, walked around the table, and crouched down. His eyes met hers. Dark, unreadable, but somehow not unkind. Come out, he said. I can't. You can. And you will. You don't understand. I understand, he said, that you ran through my building barefoot and bleeding because the alternative was worse. I understand that you chose to hide under a stranger's table instead of going home. I understand that you're terrified. What I don't understand is why you're still under there when I just offered you a way out. You didn't offer anything. Didn't I? Alara stared at him. At this man who'd just faced down her husband without flinching, who'd turned a threat into a dismissal with nothing but tone and timing. Why would you help me? She whispered. Adrian's expression didn't change. Because I can. Because he annoyed me. Because I'm curious what kind of woman runs into a crime lord's private office and thinks that's the safer option. He straightened, offering his hand. Pick a reason. They're all true. She looked at his hand for a long moment. It was steady, scarless, clean. Not the hand of someone who did his own violence, but definitely the hand of someone who ordered it done. If she took it, there would be consequences. Victor didn't forget. Didn't forgive. This would become a war and she would be the territory they fought over. But if she didn't take it, she'd crawl out from under this table, walk out of this building, and go back to the apartment where Victor would be waiting with that smile and those soft words and fists that knew exactly where to land so the bruises wouldn't show. She'd been that woman for 3 years. She didn't want to be her anymore. Alara reached up and took Adrian's hand. His grip was firm, impersonal, and he pulled her to her feet with the efficiency of someone who didn't waste movement. She swayed slightly, her legs cramping from being folded under the table, and he steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me yet." He released her, stepping back to a professional distance. "You haven't heard the terms." "Terms?" "I don't do charity, Alara. If you stay under my protection, you'll earn it." "How?" "We'll figure that out. But first," he moved to his desk, pressed a button. "Marco, bring the car around, and call Dr. Shen. Tell her she's making a house call." A voice crackled through the intercom. "Yes, sir." Adrian looked back at her. "You're bleeding!" Alara glanced down. He was right. There was blood on her dress, soaking through the silk at her side. She'd been running on adrenaline for so long she hadn't felt it. But now that he'd pointed it out, the pain came rushing in like a tide. "He threw a glass," she heard herself say. "I think some of it—" Her legs decided they were done holding her up. Adrian caught her before she hit the floor, moving faster than she'd expected. For a moment she was weightless, suspended in arms that felt nothing like Victor's, and then she was being lowered into one of the leather chairs. "Stay conscious," he said. It was an order, delivered in that same level tone. "Trying. Try harder." Despite everything, she almost smiled. "You're not very comforting." "No," he agreed. "I'm not. But I'm effective, which in the long term is considerably more useful." The room was starting to blur at the edges. She could hear him talking to someone, maybe into a phone, maybe to a person who'd entered, she wasn't sure. The words washed over her like water. "Blood type. Get the guest room ready." "No, the East Wing." "I don't care, make it work." "Am I dying?" she asked. Her voice sounded far away. "No." Adrian's face came back into focus, and his hand pressed something against her side. A cloth, probably his jacket from the feel of it. The pressure hurt, but also helped somehow. "But you're going into shock, and you've lost enough blood that we need to take this seriously." "Why are you doing this?" "We've already covered that question." "No, really, why?" He looked at her for a moment, his expression still unreadable, but something flickering behind his eyes. Calculation, maybe. Or recognition. "Because," he said finally, "Victor Hale walked into my office and demanded I return his property. And I have a policy about being given demands. Which is, I don't comply with them." The edges of her vision were going gray. She tried to focus on his face, on staying present, but it was like trying to hold water. "I'm going to be trouble for you," she whispered. "Undoubtedly. He won't stop." "Neither will I." "You don't even know me." "Not yet." Adrian's hand stayed steady on her side, maintaining pressure on the wound. "But I'm a patient man. We have time." The last thing she saw before the gray overtook everything was his eyes. Dark, certain, and absolutely committed to whatever decision he'd just made. When she woke up, she was in a bed that wasn't hers, in a room she didn't recognize, with bandages wrapped around her torso and an IV in her arm. And sitting in a chair by the window, reading something on a tablet, was Adrian Cade. He looked up when she stirred. "Good, you're awake." Alara's mouth felt like sandpaper. "Where?" "My home. The doctor stitched you up. 12 stitches, no major damage, but you'll be sore for a while." He set the tablet aside. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck." "Close." Victor apparently has decent aim with glassware. The memory came back in fragments. The argument. The glass exploding against the wall, then redirected at her when she'd tried to leave. Running. The cold marble. This room. Victor. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through her side. "Don't," Adrian said, not moving from his chair. "The stitches are fresh. You'll tear them." "I need to—" "Need to what? Go back? Call him? Apologize?" His voice was clinical, detached. "You're not doing any of those things. You can't just keep me here." "I'm not keeping you anywhere. You're free to leave whenever you choose." But before you do, you should know that Victor filed a missing persons report about 3 hours ago. Told the police you were having a mental health crisis, that you're a danger to yourself, that he's desperately worried. Adrian's expression didn't change. He's very convincing. I watched the press conference. Alara's heart sank. Press conference? Complete with tears and a photo of you from your wedding day. You looked happy in it. I was drugged in it. I assumed as much. The pupils gave it away. He said it so matter-of-factly, like he cataloged those details in every photograph he saw, which maybe he did. So I can't leave, Alara said flatly. You can. But if you do, and someone recognizes you, you'll be returned to him with the full sympathy of law enforcement and public opinion. He's framed this very carefully. Of course he has. She closed her eyes. He's always 3 moves ahead. So we'll make 4. She looked at him. We? You asked why I'm doing this. Here's another reason. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his elbows on his knees, his eyes locked on hers. Men like Victor Hale offend me. They build their power on controlling things weaker than themselves. They mistake cruelty for strength, and they think they're clever because they've never encountered someone who actually is. And you're clever. I'm many things. Clever is one of them. Arrogant is another. Absolutely. He didn't even blink. But I'm arrogant because I've earned it. Victor is arrogant because no one's ever made him pay for it. I'd like to correct that imbalance. Alara stared at him. This man who turned her escape into some kind of personal vendetta against her husband's philosophy. What do you want from me? She asked. Right now? I want you to rest. Heal. Let Dr. Shen monitor you for infection. He stood, picking up his tablet. After that, we'll discuss what comes next. And if I say no? Then you say no. But I think you're smarter than that. He moved toward the door. Adrian? He paused, looking back. What did you mean, we'll discuss what comes next? A slight smile touched his mouth. Not warm, not cold, just there. I meant that hiding under tables isn't a long-term strategy. If you want to stop running, you need to learn how to stand still. If you want to stop being afraid, you need to become something worth being afraid of. He opened the door. Sleep. We'll start tomorrow. Start what? Your education. Then he was gone, the door closing with a soft click that somehow felt louder than if he'd slammed it. Alara lay there staring at the ceiling, her mind racing too fast for her exhausted body to keep up. Outside the window, the city glittered like broken glass. Inside this room, inside this moment, she was safe. But safety, she was beginning to understand, was just another word for temporary. And if Adrian Cade was offering her something more than temporary, something that required an education and payment, and standing still instead of running, well, she'd already made the choice when she took his hand. Now she just had to figure out how to survive it. What? The next morning arrived with weak sunlight and the smell of coffee. Alara woke to find a tray on the nightstand beside her bed, fresh fruit, toast, coffee in a porcelain cup, and a small white pill next to a glass of water. There was a note written in precise handwriting. For pain. Dr. Shen will check on you at noon. The closet has clothes. Breakfast is mandatory. Okay. She stared at the note for a long moment, then at the pill. In another life, in another situation, she might have been suspicious. Might have questioned what was in it, what strings were attached, what this man actually wanted from her. But her side hurt, her head hurt, and she was so tired of questioning everything that she took the pill and drank the water and ate the breakfast because the alternative was lying here spinning in circles of paranoia. The clothes in the closet fit. Not perfectly. They were clearly bought in a hurry, basic items in neutral colors, but they fit well enough. Soft pants, a loose shirt, nothing constricting or painful. She was standing at the window, looking out at gardens she hadn't noticed the night before, when someone knocked. Come in, she said, expecting Dr. Shen. It wasn't Dr. Shen. It was a woman, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and sharper posture. She carried herself like someone who'd forgotten how to be uncertain about anything. Alara Vance, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes? Rosalind Chen. I run Mr. Cade's household operations. She looked Alara up and down with the assessing gaze of someone conducting an inventory. You're healing adequately? I think so. Good. Dr. Shen will confirm. In the meantime, Mr. Cade has asked me to go over the house rules with you. House rules. This is a large property. Multiple wings, multiple staff, multiple security protocols. If you're staying, you need to understand how things work. And if I'm not staying? Rosalind's expression didn't change. Are you not staying? Alara realized she didn't have an answer to that. Rules, Rosalind continued, not waiting for one. First, there are rooms marked with red key cards. You don't enter them, ever. Not because we're hiding anything particularly interesting, but because they contain either sensitive materials or security systems, and explaining to Mr. Cade why you accidentally triggered a lockdown would be tedious for both of us. Okay. Second, if you leave the property, you inform security. Not because you're a prisoner, but because if Victor Hale is looking for you, which he is, we need to know where you are in order to keep you alive. That was blunt. Third, staff will be polite to you, but they work for Mr. Cade. If you ask them to do something that contradicts his instructions, they'll choose his instructions. Don't take it personally. Anything else? Yes. Rosalind's eyes sharpened. Mr. Cade is a private man. Whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever you learn while you're here, it stays here. Not because we'll threaten you, but because discretion is the price of his protection. Once you leave, if you leave, you take nothing with you but what you came with, understood? Alara nodded slowly. Good. Rosalind's posture relaxed a fraction. Dr. Shen will be here in 20 minutes. After that, Mr. Cade would like to see you in the East Library. I'll have someone show you the way. Why the library? I assume because that's where he wants to have the conversation. Rosalind moved toward the door, then paused. A word of advice? Sure. Mr. Cade doesn't waste time on lost causes. If he's investing resources in you, it's because he sees something worth the investment. Don't prove him wrong. Then she was gone, leaving Alara alone with that statement and all its implications. Dr. Shen arrived precisely at noon. She was younger than Alara expected, efficient and thorough, checking the stitches and vitals with practiced ease. Clean, she announced. No infection, good color, you're healing well. How long until they come out? 10 days, maybe 12. I'll check again in 3. Dr. Shen packed up her kit. The pain medication I left is strong. Don't drive or operate machinery while you're taking it, and don't drink. I wasn't planning to. Good. People in your situation sometimes do. My situation. Dr. Shen looked at her directly. Running from violent partners, it's not uncommon, and the urge to self-medicate is understandable but counterproductive. You've treated others like me? Mr. Cade makes certain resources available to people who need them. I'm one of those resources. She closed her bag with a decisive click. But for what it's worth, you're the first one he's brought here. That information sat heavy in Alara's chest. Why? She asked. That's a question for him, not me. Dr. Shen headed for the door, then looked back. But if I had to guess, you ran toward danger instead of away from it. That's unusual. He finds unusual things interesting. After she left, a young man, barely 20, polite and nervous, appeared to guide Alara through the house. It was massive. She'd known that intellectually, but walking through it was something else. Hallways branched into other hallways. Rooms opened onto rooms. Everything was decorated with restrained elegance, expensive without being ostentatious. The East Library was smaller than she expected. Just a room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, comfortable chairs, and windows overlooking the garden. Adrian was standing at one of those windows when she entered. He turned, gave her the same assessing look Rosalind had, and apparently found whatever he was looking for. You look better. I feel like hell. That's honest. I appreciate honesty. He gestured to the chairs. Sit. We have a lot to discuss. Alara sat, her side protesting the movement. Adrian didn't sit. He stood by the window, backlit by afternoon sun, and when he spoke, his voice had the quality of someone who'd thought very carefully about what he was about to say. I'm going to make you an offer. You're going to want to refuse it immediately because it's going to sound insane and possibly insulting. I'm asking you to listen to the entire thing before you respond. Okay. Victor Hale is a problem. Not just your problem, though obviously he's very much your problem, but mine as well now. He walked into my office and issued demands. That makes him a territorial challenge, and I don't tolerate territorial challenges. So this is about ego, partly, but it's also about the fact that I've been looking for a reason to move against Hale Industries for 2 years and you just gave me one. Adrian's expression was unreadable. He's built his empire on shell companies and cooked books and strategic violence. He's careful, I'll give him that. But careful men make mistakes when they're angry. And right now, he's very angry. Because I ran. Because you embarrassed him. Public press conference, missing wife, all that performed concern, it's overcompensation. He showed his hand. Alara processed that. And you want to use that. I want to dismantle him, systematically, carefully, completely. Adrian finally sat, his movements precise. But I can't do it if you go back to him, and I can't protect you long term if you remain the person you are right now. The person I am, afraid, reactive, waiting for someone else to save you. He said it without judgment, just stating facts. That woman will always run, will always hide under tables, will always go back eventually because she doesn't know how to do anything else. The words hit like physical blows, mostly because they were true. So what do you want? I want to train you. Alara stared at him. Train me to do what? To stand, to fight, to stop flinching. He leaned forward slightly. I want to take the fear Victor spent 3 years instilling in you and turn it into something useful. I want to teach you how to walk into a room and own it, how to look at a threat and calculate its weaknesses instead of your exits. Why? Because a woman who can do those things doesn't go back to her abuser. She goes forward, and forward is the only direction that matters. Alara's mind was racing. You want to turn me into what? Some kind of weapon? I want to give you the tools to be whatever you choose to be. Right now, you don't have choices. You have survival instincts and fear responses. That's not living, Alara. That's existing. And what do you get out of this? Leverage against Victor, a partner who understands his methods from the inside, and possibly, he paused, someone interesting to talk to. This house gets boring. It was the first thing he'd said that sounded even remotely human. How long? She asked. As long as it takes. Months, probably. Maybe a year. And then? Then you decide. Stay, go, start over somewhere new. But you'll make that decision as someone with options, not someone with only one escape route. Alara looked at him. Really looked at him. This man who'd saved her for reasons that were at least 50% selfish, who was offering her something that sounded like salvation wrapped in self-interest. What if I say no? Then I'll have Dr. Shen monitor you for another week. I'll give you enough money to disappear, and I'll provide documentation that will help you start over. But his eyes locked onto hers. Victor will find you, eventually. Men like him always do, and next time you might not find a door that opens. That's not exactly subtle manipulation. I'm not interested in subtle. I'm interested in effective. Fair enough. Alara stood, walked to the window, looked out at gardens that probably cost more to maintain than her entire previous life had cost to live. If I do this, she said slowly, I have conditions. Name them. My mother. She's in a care facility. He pays for it. If I disappear, he'll stop paying. I'll take over the payments, anonymously. I want to contact her, not now, but eventually, to let her know I'm okay. When the time is right, we'll arrange it safely. And if at any point I want to leave, you leave. No arguments, no manipulation, no consequences. You'll have resources and options. He stood as well, moving to stand beside her at the window. But Alara, understand something. If you start this, if you commit to this, I'm going to push you, hard. I'm going to make you face things you've spent 3 years avoiding. It's going to hurt, and you're going to hate me sometimes. I already don't particularly like you. That got the barest hint of a smile. Good. Liking me would complicate things. One more condition. Go ahead. Tell me the real reason, not the strategic one, not the leverage, not the boredom. The actual reason you're doing this. Adrian was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was lower, more genuine. Because I watched you crawl under that table and choose a stranger over your husband. And I thought, here's someone with enough survival instinct and enough courage to know when the safe choice is actually the most dangerous one. That's rare. I don't like seeing rare things destroyed. It was probably the most honest thing he'd said since she'd met him. Alara extended her hand. Okay, teach me. Adrian looked at her hand for a moment, then took it. His grip was firm, professional. We start tomorrow, 6 a.m. Wear comfortable clothes. What happens tomorrow? You learn how to stand up. He released her hand and walked toward the door, then paused. Alara? Yes? Tonight, you'll want to call him, apologize, promise to come home, make peace. His eyes were hard. Don't. That person is done making those calls. Then he left her standing in the library, sunlight streaming through the windows, her hands still warm from his grip. Outside, the city continued its daily violence. Inside, something new was beginning. And Alara Vance, who'd spent 3 years learning how to disappear, was about to learn how to be seen. 6 a.m. came faster than Alara expected. She'd barely slept, her body caught between exhaustion and the strange hyper-awareness that came from sleeping somewhere unfamiliar. Every sound had jerked her awake, the house settling, footsteps in distant hallways, the wind against windows. By the time pale light started filtering through the curtains, she'd already been staring at the ceiling for an hour. The knock on her door was soft but unmistakable. "You're awake," Adrian's voice came through the wood. "Good. Jim is downstairs, west wing. Follow the stairs at the end of the hall." She didn't hear him walk away, but when she opened the door 30 seconds later, the hallway was empty. The gym turned out to be less a gym and more a small facility that could have trained professional fighters. Mats covered half the floor, weights lined one wall, and there was equipment she didn't even have names for. Everything was pristine, clearly maintained, clearly used. Adrian was already there, dressed in dark athletic wear, wrapping his hands with practiced efficiency. "You're late," he said without looking up. "You said 6. It's 6:02. Late is late." He finished the wrap, flexed his fingers, then finally looked at her. "But we'll work on that. Strip down." Alara froze. "What?" "Not like that." He gestured impatiently. "Shoes, jacket, anything restrictive. I need to see how you move." She hesitated, then removed her jacket, leaving her in the tank top and leggings she'd found in the closet. Her stitches pulled slightly with the movement. Adrian noticed. "How's the side?" "Hurts." "Good. Pain means you're paying attention." He moved to the center of the mat. "Come here." Alara walked over, aware of how his eyes tracked every step she took. Not sexual, just analytical, like he was cataloging data. "Stand how you normally stand," he said. She stood. "No, how you stood when you lived with Victor." The shift was automatic and humiliating, shoulders curving inward, weight on her back foot, head slightly down. 3 years of making herself smaller, less threatening, less visible. "There it is." Adrian circled her slowly. "You take up about 60% of the space you actually occupy. Your center of gravity is too far back. You're already positioned to retreat before anyone's even approached you." "I didn't realize I was doing that. That's the point. It's unconscious now. We're going to make it conscious, then break it." He stopped in front of her. "Stand up straight." She straightened. "More." She tried. "Alara, you're still apologizing with your posture. I said stand up, not suggest the possibility of standing up." Something in his tone, not quite mockery, not quite criticism, sparked irritation. She pulled her shoulders back, lifted her chin, planted her feet. "Better," he said. "Still tentative, but better. Now I'm going to push you. Don't move." "What?" His hand shot out, palm flat against her shoulder, and shoved. Alara stumbled back 3 steps before catching herself. Adrian's expression didn't change. "Again. This time, don't move. You just, again." She set her stance, tried to brace herself. He pushed. She stumbled again, though only 2 steps this time. "You're thinking about not moving instead of actually not moving. Those are different things." He reset. "Again." They did it 17 times. 17 times he pushed her, and 17 times she failed to hold her ground. By the 18th, her frustration had crystallized into something sharper. When his hand came forward, she pushed back. It didn't stop him. He was significantly stronger, but she didn't stumble, didn't retreat. Adrian's eyebrow lifted fractionally. "There. That's the beginning." "The beginning of what?" "Of you remembering that you're allowed to push back." He stepped away, gestured to the mat. "Sit." She sat, her side protesting. Adrian sat across from her, close enough to talk without raising his voice, far enough to maintain distance. Here's what the next 6 months look like, he said. Every morning, 6 a.m., you're here. We train your body. Strength, balance, endurance, how to hit without breaking your hand, how to fall without breaking your face. Afternoons, we train your mind. Strategy, manipulation, reading people, controlling rooms. Evenings are yours, but you'll have assignments. Assignments? Reading, observation, practice. You'll know what I mean when we get there. He paused. Questions? Yeah, why are you qualified to teach me any of this? Valid question. I'm qualified because I've spent 20 years learning how power actually works. Not the sanitized version they teach in business schools, but the real mechanics. How to recognize weakness, how to exploit it, how to make people believe they chose something you forced on them. His eyes were steady on hers. I've built an empire on understanding violence, not just physical, but economic, social, psychological. You want to stop being Victor's victim, you need to understand the same things he understands, preferably better than he does. And you think 6 months is enough time for that? No, 6 months is enough time to give you the foundation. Actually, mastering it takes years. But foundation is what you need right now. Alara pulled her knees up, wincing as the movement pulled her stitches. What if I can't do it? What if I'm just not built for this? Then you're not. But you don't know that yet, and neither do I. He stood, offered her his hand. So let's find out. She took it, let him pull her to her feet. First lesson, Adrian said, how to throw a punch without destroying your thumb. The next 2 hours were brutal. Adrian broke down every movement to its component parts: stance, hip rotation, shoulder alignment, fist position. He made her repeat each piece until her muscles burned, then made her do it 50 more times. Your power comes from your legs, not your arms, he said, for what felt like the 100th time. You're trying to arm punch. That's how you break bones. Use your whole body. I'm using my whole body. No, you're using your arm and hoping your body catches up. Again. She wanted to argue, but she was too tired and he was too clearly right. So she reset, focused on driving from her legs, rotating her hips, letting the force travel up through her core into her shoulder. The bag swung harder this time. There, Adrian said. Feel the difference? She did. It felt less like she was hitting and more like she was throwing her whole weight forward in a controlled fall. Again, 20 more. By the time he called time, her arms felt like lead and sweat was soaking through her shirt. The stitches in her side were screaming. Shower, breakfast, then meet me in the North Study at 10, Adrian said, already unwrapping his hands. Don't be late. What's at 10? Your other education. He left without explaining further. Alara made it back to her room, showered in water as hot as she could stand, and seriously considered just staying in bed. But something about Adrian's voice, that absolute certainty that she would show up, made her get dressed and find her way to the North Study. It was smaller than the library, more intimate. Bookshelves lined 2 walls, a desk sat near the window, and there was a small sitting area with 2 chairs facing each other. Adrian was already there, reading something on his tablet. He looked up when she entered. Sit. She sat. He set the tablet aside and produced a folder from the desk drawer. Do you know what Victor does? Actually does, not the public-facing version. Hale Industries. Real estate development, I think. Some investment ventures. That's the facade. Underneath, he runs a moderately successful money laundering operation disguised as property development. He buys distressed properties, renovates them with inflated budgets that hide illegal funds, then sells them at a loss that's offset by the cleaned money. It's clever, relatively low risk, and completely dependent on maintaining certain political relationships. He opened the folder, spread out several documents. These are his current projects. 12 properties across the eastern seaboard, all in various stages of development. Combined, they're washing approximately $40 million annually for 3 different organizations. Adrian tapped one document. This one in Baltimore is his most vulnerable. The contractor is skimming, the permits are falsified, and the city inspector, who's supposed to be looking the other way, just got diagnosed with terminal cancer and is suddenly very interested in legacy. Alara stared at the documents. How do you know all this? Because it's my job to know. Information is currency, and I'm extremely wealthy. He leaned back. Now, if you wanted to hurt Victor, really hurt him, which project would you target? I don't know. The Baltimore one, because it's vulnerable? That's reactive thinking. Obvious choice, high visibility, which means it's probably defended better than it looks. Try again. She looked at the documents, feeling stupid and lost. I don't know what I'm looking for. Then I'll teach you. Look at the timeline. When do these projects close? She scanned the dates. Most of them are finishing in the next 6 months, except this one in Philadelphia. That's got another 18 months. Why? Environmental delays, it says. Contamination issues. Which means, she thought about it. It's tying up money for longer than planned. Exactly. It's a locked investment. The people whose money he's cleaning can't access it until the project completes. And right now it's bleeding costs with no end in sight. That makes them nervous. Nervous partners are dangerous partners. Adrian pulled up something on his tablet, turned it to show her. This is Victor's communication pattern over the last 3 months. Notice anything? She looked at the graph. He's calling Philadelphia a lot more than the other cities. Every other day, sometimes twice a day. That's not normal oversight. That's crisis management. He's scrambling to keep that project from imploding because if it does, he loses the clients, the reputation, and possibly his kneecaps depending on who he's washing for. So Philadelphia is the target. Philadelphia is where the pressure point is, but we don't target it directly. We apply pressure around it until something breaks on its own. He closed the folder. This is how you think strategically. You don't go for the obvious weakness. You find the stress point and increase the stress until the structure fails. Alara felt something shifting in her head, pieces arranging themselves into new patterns. You're going to sabotage his project. I'm going to create circumstances where it sabotages itself. There's a difference. Adrian stood, walked to the window. But that's not your concern right now. Your concern is learning how to see these patterns, how to read the data underneath the data. Why? I'm not going to run a criminal empire. No. But you're going to navigate one long enough to get free of it, and that requires understanding how it works. He turned back to her. Victor built his power on information asymmetry. He knows things you don't, sees things you can't, controls things you're not aware of. That only works if you stay ignorant. We're eliminating the ignorance. The next 3 hours were like drinking from a fire hose. Adrian walked her through shell companies, offshore accounts, political leverage, blackmail mechanics, the difference between legal threats and actual threats. He showed her how Victor's entire operation was built on relationships and debts, how every favor he'd ever done had been a calculated investment in future leverage. People think power is about money, Adrian said at one point. It's not. Money is just a tool. Power is about knowing exactly what someone needs and being the only person who can provide it, or take it away. That's terrifying. That's reality, and Victor's been using it on you for 3 years. He pulled up another document. Look at this. Your mother's care facility. He's been paying $60,000 a year for her treatment, correct? Yes, except the facility only charges $42,000. The extra $18,000 goes into an account he controls. He's been skimming your guilt. Adrian's expression was neutral, but his voice carried an edge. When you tried to leave him the first time, what did he say? Alara's throat tightened. That my mother would lose her care, that she'd end up in a state facility where she'd die alone and confused. And you believed him because you didn't know the actual numbers. Didn't know that even without his money, there were options. He manufactured a crisis that only he could solve. Adrian closed the document. That's manipulation, and now you know what it looks like. She felt sick. He was stealing from my mother's care to control me. Yes. That's what men like him do. They find the thing you love most and turn it into a chain. He looked at her directly. Which is why you're learning this, so no one can do it to you again. The afternoon session ended when Alara's head felt too full to absorb anything else. Adrian sent her away with a reading assignment, 3 books on negotiation, power dynamics, and what he called social engineering. Tomorrow, same time, he said. And tonight, before you sleep, I want you to write down every time Victor made you feel like you needed him. Every crisis he solved, every problem he fixed, all of it. Why? Because you're going to see the pattern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Dinner was brought to her room, pasta, salad, bread that was still warm. She ate mechanically, her mind churning through everything Adrian had shown her. Then she started writing. The list grew longer than she expected. Every fight that ended with him being the one to apologize first, but only after she'd been reduced to tears. Every financial crisis that he'd stepped in to solve. Crises she now realized he'd probably created. Every time her friends had slowly disappeared from her life because he'd made seeing them so difficult, it wasn't worth the effort. By the time she finished, her hand was cramping and she'd filled 6 pages. Adrian had been right. The pattern was unmistakable once she looked for it. She tried to sleep but couldn't, her mind too active, too angry, too awake. Around midnight, she gave up and went looking for something to drink. The house was different at night, quieter but not silent. She could hear distant sounds, voices from some far wing, music playing softly somewhere, the hum of security systems doing whatever security systems did. She found the kitchen by trial and error, pushed open the door, and stopped. Adrian was sitting at the counter drinking coffee and reading on his tablet. He looked up. "Can't sleep? How did you know I was—" "Never mind. Stupid question. Security cameras. You triggered an alert when you left your wing." He gestured to the coffee pot. "Help yourself." She poured a cup, added sugar, stood awkwardly by the counter. "Sit," he said. "I don't bite." "I'm not sure I believe that." "Fair." He set down the tablet. "You wrote the list. How did you—" "Because I gave you an assignment that would make you angry, and you're here at midnight drinking coffee instead of sleeping. That tells me you wrote it." He took a sip from his own cup. "How many pages?" 6. "More than you expected?" "A lot more." They sat in silence for a moment. The kitchen was enormous, but somehow felt intimate at this hour. Just the two of them, and the soft light from under-cabinet LEDs. "Can I ask you something?" Alara said finally. "You can ask. I may not answer." "Why are you still awake?" "Insomnia. Chronic. Had it for years." He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. "Sleep has never been something I'm good at." "So you just— what? Work all night?" Sometimes. Sometimes I read. Sometimes I sit in the kitchen and wait for people who can't sleep to come find me." The corner of his mouth lifted fractionally. "You're not the first person to end up here at midnight." "Who else?" "People I've helped before. Not often, not many, but a few over the years. Women mostly, running from situations similar to yours." He rotated his cup slowly. "I don't run a shelter, Alara. This isn't charity. But sometimes the strategic choice and the decent choice happen to align." "And which is this? Strategic or decent?" "Both. I told you, I don't like Victor's philosophy, and I like winning. Helping you accomplishes both." She studied him over the rim of her cup. "You're very honest about being self-interested. Would you prefer I pretend otherwise? Lie about my motivations? Tell you this is all about saving you from the goodness of my heart?" He shook his head. "That would be insulting to both of us. Most people like to pretend they're better than they are. Most people are afraid of being seen clearly. I'm not." He finished his coffee, set the cup down with a decisive click. "Besides, you don't need a savior. You need a teacher. Saviors create dependency. Teachers create capability. And if I fail, if I can't learn what you're teaching, then you fail. But failing after trying is different from never trying at all." His eyes met hers. "You've spent 3 years being told you're weak, incompetent, that you need protection you couldn't survive without. Those are lies. But you won't believe they're lies just because I tell you they are. You need to prove it to yourself. Through getting pushed around in a gym? Through discovering that you're stronger than you think, smarter than you've been allowed to be, and capable of things that would terrify the woman you were 2 days ago." He stood, rinsed his cup. "The gym is just the beginning. The real work is here." He tapped his temple. "Rebuilding how you see yourself." Alara felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you hate me for waking you up at 6 a.m. after 3 hours of sleep." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Alara?" "Yeah?" "The list you wrote, keep it. Add to it when you remember new things. You're going to need it later." "For what?" "For when you stop being angry and start being strategic." Then he was gone, leaving her alone in the kitchen with cold coffee and questions she couldn't quite articulate. The next 3 weeks blurred together in a rhythm of exhaustion and discovery. 6 a.m., every morning, the gym. Adrian pushed her harder each day, adding complexity to the basic movements, introducing defense, teaching her how to use an opponent's momentum against them. She collected bruises like badges, learned to tape her own hands, discovered muscles she hadn't known existed. "You're telegraphing," he'd say, batting away her punch before it landed. "Your shoulder drops half a second before you move. Stop announcing your intentions." Or, "Faster, you're thinking too much. Let your body remember instead of your brain planning." Or when she finally landed a solid hit to the pad he was holding. "Good. Again, 20 more just like that." Afternoons were mental training. He'd give her scenarios, complex situations involving multiple parties with conflicting interests, and make her diagram the power dynamics, identify the leverage points, predict the outcomes. 3 business partners, he'd say. Equal shares in a company. One wants to sell, one wants to expand, one wants to dissolve. None of them trust each other. How do you exploit that? She'd gotten it wrong the first dozen times. But slowly, painfully, she started to see the patterns. Started to understand that every relationship was a negotiation. Every negotiation had leverage, and leverage always came from knowing what someone needed more than they wanted you to know they needed it. "You're learning," Adrian said one afternoon after she'd correctly predicted how a political scandal would play out. "Still slow, but learning." Slow? You think too linearly. A to B to C. Real strategy requires thinking in networks. A affects B, which changes C while simultaneously impacting D and E. He pulled up a new diagram. "Try this one." The evenings were her own, but she spent them reading the books he assigned, watching the news with new eyes, practicing the observation exercises he'd given her. "Go to the coffee shop on Market Street," he'd told her once. "Sit there for 2 hours. Count how many people look at their phones within 30 seconds of sitting down. Note who makes eye contact with strangers and who avoids it. Write down what you notice." She'd thought it was busy work until she did it and realized she was learning to read micro-expressions, body language, social hierarchies playing out in real time. But the nights were hardest. The nights were when her phone, which Adrian had locked in a safe somewhere, felt like a phantom limb. When she'd wake up from dreams where Victor had found her, where Adrian had changed his mind, where she'd somehow ended up back in that apartment with its white walls and expensive furniture and the particular smell of Victor's cologne that made her stomach turn. On the worst nights, she'd end up in the kitchen. Adrian was always there. They'd talk sometimes. Other times, they'd just sit in comfortable silence, drinking coffee or tea, letting the night settle around them. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked one night, about 3 weeks in. "Regret what?" "This life. All the violence and manipulation and never sleeping." He considered the question seriously. "No, I'm good at it, and I'd rather be good at something difficult than mediocre at something safe." "That's bleak." "That's pragmatic." He looked at her over his cup. "You're getting faster in the ring." The subject change was abrupt but welcome. "You're still beating me every time. I've been training for 20 years. You've been training for 3 weeks. The fact that you're lasting more than 30 seconds is progress." He set down his cup. "Tomorrow, we start weapon defense." "Weapons?" "Knives, primarily. You need to know how to disarm someone without getting killed in the process." That's a comforting thought. It's a useful thought. Victor owns guns. I've seen his permit records. You should know what to do if he ever points one at you. The casual way he said it, like he was discussing grocery lists, should have been jarring. Instead, it was oddly reassuring. Adrian didn't sugarcoat danger. He acknowledged it, planned for it, taught her how to survive it. "Okay," she said. "Weapon defense. Can't wait." His mouth twitched. "Your sarcasm is improving too. I have a good teacher." "You have a demanding teacher. There's a difference." Week 4, something shifted. They were in the gym, running through the usual drills, when Adrian stopped mid-movement. "Hit me," he said. "What?" "Not the pad. Me. Hit me like you mean it." Alara hesitated. "I don't want to... I'm not asking what you want. I'm telling you what to do. Hit me." There was something in his voice that triggered old instincts, compliance, appeasement, backing down. She felt her shoulders starting to curve inward. Then she caught herself, saw what she was doing, and got angry. She set her stance, drove from her legs like he'd taught her, and swung. Adrian blocked it easily, but his expression changed. Better. Again. She swung again. He blocked again. You're still pulling the punch. You're afraid of hurting me. Yeah, because you're my... She stopped. Your what? Your teacher? Your host? Your savior? He dropped his guard completely. I'm none of those things right now. Right now I'm just a target. So hit the target. Something in her snapped. She swung with everything she had. Technique forgotten, form abandoned, just pure frustrated rage, and connected solidly with his raised forearm. The impact jarred through her entire body. Adrian smiled. Actually smiled. There it is. That's what I've been waiting for. He reset his stance. Again. They went for another hour, and by the end her knuckles were swelling and her arms felt like jelly, but something had fundamentally changed. She'd stopped being afraid of her own force. Good session, Adrian said afterward, wrapping ice around her hands. You broke through something today. I hit you. You committed to hitting me. There's a difference. He secured the ice pack. Before today, you were practicing violence. Now you're capable of it. That's progress. I'm not sure that's something to celebrate. It's not about celebration. It's about capacity. You don't have to use it, but you need to know you can. He stood. Take tomorrow off. Let your hands heal. We'll resume Thursday. What do I do tomorrow? Whatever you want. Read, sleep, explore the grounds. You've earned a day off. She spent the day off walking the property, discovering that the gardens were even more extensive than she'd thought, finding a small pond with actual swans, sitting on a bench and just breathing air that didn't taste like fear. Her phone rang that evening, the house line, not her cell. She picked up. Hello? Alara Vance? A woman's voice, professional. Yes? This is Mercy General Hospital. We're calling about your mother, Margaret Vance. Alara's heart stopped. What happened? Nothing serious, but she's asking for you. She's become quite insistent. We wanted to check if you were available to visit. Alara looked toward the door, calculating. Can I call you back? Of course, but soon, if possible. She's becoming agitated. Alara hung up and went to find Adrian. He was in his office, doing something on 3 monitors simultaneously. He looked up when she entered. My mother's asking for me, she said without preamble. Adrian's expression didn't change, but his attention sharpened. What hospital? Mercy General. That's 40 minutes from here, in the city, where Victor has connections. He stood, walked to a wall panel, pressed something. When did they call? Just now. Did they ask you to come immediately? They said soon. Soon is not immediately. That's interesting. He was typing something on his phone. Could be legitimate, could be a trap. We'll find out. How? I'm having someone go check on your mother right now. If she's actually asking for you, we'll arrange a safe visit. If she's not, his jaw tightened fractionally. Then we'll know Victor's getting creative. 20 minutes later, his phone rang. He answered, listened, said thank you, and hung up. She's fine, sleeping peacefully. Hasn't asked for anything except water in the last 6 hours. Alara felt cold. So that call was Victor or someone working for him, trying to draw you out? Adrian's voice was matter of fact. They're probing, testing to see if you'll break cover. He's using my mother as bait. Yes. The casual confirmation made something crystallize in her chest. Not fear this time, rage. I want to visit her, Alara said. Actually visit her, not walk into a trap. Can we do that? Adrian studied her for a moment. We can, but not yet. Not until we've established better security protocols. He paused. In the meantime, I've had her moved to a different facility under a different name. Better care, better security. Victor won't be able to find her. You moved my mother? I protected your leverage point. Same thing. He pulled up something on his phone, showed her. This is where she is now. Private facility, excellent staff, round-the-clock security that doesn't advertise itself. She's safer there than she was at Mercy. Alara looked at the screen, at the information he'd casually arranged without asking her permission, without warning her it was coming. She should have been angry about that. Instead, she felt relieved. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me. This is strategy, not kindness. If Victor can't threaten her, he can't use her against you. It's basic tactics. But his eyes were less cold than his words. Besides, I told you I'd take care of the payments. This is me taking care of them. That night, lying in bed, Alara thought about the phone call, about how easily she might have fallen for it a month ago, about how Victor was still playing the same games, still using the same weapons, still assuming she was the same person. But she wasn't. Not anymore. The realization settled into her bones over the following weeks, hardening into something she couldn't name but could feel shifting her center of gravity. She wasn't just learning to fight or strategize. She was learning to occupy space differently, to exist without apology. By week 8, Adrian had her sparring with Marco, the young security guard who'd first shown her around the house. Marco was fast, trained, and had the good sense to not pull his punches just because she was a woman. She hit the mat hard after he swept her legs. "Get up," Adrian called from where he sat watching. "You're dropping your left guard when you throw the right. He's reading you like a billboard." Alara pushed herself up, tasting copper. "He's faster than me. So be smarter. Speed is useless if it's predictable." She reset, watching Marco circle. He was waiting for her to throw that right again. She could see it in how he positioned himself. So she faked it, pulled back, and when he moved to counter something that wasn't coming, she stepped inside his guard and drove her elbow into his ribs. Not hard enough to actually hurt him, but hard enough to make the point. Marco grunted, stepped back, grinned. "Nice." "Again," Adrian said. They went 3 more rounds. She won 1, lost 2, and ended up with a split lip and a growing conviction that maybe she wasn't completely hopeless at this. "Better," Adrian said after Marco left. He tossed her a towel. "You're starting to think during the fight instead of after it." "I got my ass kicked." "You got your ass kicked strategically. There's a difference." He stood, stretched. "Come on. I want to show you something." She followed him out of the gym, through hallways she'd learned to navigate without getting lost, upstairs to a part of the house she hadn't been in before. He stopped at a door with a red keycard reader. "Remember what Rosalind said about red doors?" he asked. "Don't enter them." "Correct, but I'm making an exception." He swiped his card, pushed the door open. "This is my operations room. Very few people see it. Congratulations." The room beyond was part war room, part high-tech command center. Multiple screens showed various feeds, security cameras, news channels, what looked like financial markets. A large table dominated the center, currently covered in documents and photographs. Adrian moved to the table, gestured for her to join him. "This is Victor," he said, pointing to a surveillance photo. 2 days ago meeting with these 2 men. Recognize them?" Alara studied the faces. One was vaguely familiar. "That's Thomas Crane. He was at our wedding." Thomas Crane, who runs the largest construction union in the city and has very interesting connections to very uninteresting people. Adrian pulled up another photo. The other one is Marcus Webb. He provides the money that Victor washes through his properties. "You've been watching him." "I've been documenting him. There's a difference. Watching is passive. Documentation is building a case." He spread out more photos, forming a timeline. Victor's getting nervous. His Philadelphia project is hemorrhaging money, his partners are asking questions, and he's starting to make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind where he meets with his business partners in public places instead of secure ones, where he has conversations near open windows, where he forgets that paranoia is a survival skill, not a character flaw. Adrian's smile was cold. He's so focused on finding you that he's not watching his own back. Alara felt something twist in her chest. "He's looking for me?" Obsessively. He's hired 3 different private investigators, filed legal motions, given interviews about his missing wife who needs medical attention. He's made you into a full-time campaign. Adrian pulled up a news article on one of the screens. "See for yourself." The headline read, "Tech CEO pleads for wife's safe return." Below it was a photo of Victor looking appropriately devastated at a press conference. Alara read the quotes. "She's not well. She needs help. If anyone has seen Alara, please. I just want her to come home where she's safe." Her hands clenched involuntarily. "He's making me sound like I'm having a psychotic break." He's controlling the narrative. It's smart, actually. If you surface on your own, you'll be seen as either unstable or lying. Either way, public sympathy stays with him. Adrian closed the article. which is why you're not surfacing yet. When? When we're ready. When you're ready. He looked at her directly. How much longer do you need? The question landed heavier than she expected. For what? To face him. Because that's where this ends, Alara. Not with you hiding here forever, not with him giving up and moving on. This ends when you go back and make him understand that you're not his anymore. Her mouth went dry. You want me to go back? I want you to choose to go back. On your terms, with your power, to take back what's yours, and make him watch while you do it. Adrian's voice was steady, certain. But only when you're ready, and only if you want to. I don't know if I'll ever be ready for that. Then we keep training until you are. That night she couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop seeing Victor's face in that press conference. Couldn't stop hearing his voice saying her name like a prayer. She knew what he was doing, had learned enough from Adrian to see the manipulation, the strategy, the performance. But knowing it intellectually and feeling it emotionally were different things. Around 2 a.m., she gave up and went to the kitchen. Adrian wasn't there. She felt oddly disappointed, then annoyed at herself for the disappointment. She poured coffee she didn't want, sat at the counter, and tried to organize thoughts that refused to organize. Can't sleep? She jumped. Adrian was standing in the doorway, wearing dark clothes, looking like he'd just come in from outside. Jesus, where did you come from? Meeting. Had to handle something. He moved to the coffee pot, poured his own cup. What's keeping you up? The press conference? You, this whole thing. She gestured vaguely. I don't know if I can do what you're asking. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm presenting an option. An option that involves going back to the man who spent 3 years breaking me down. That's not an option. That's insanity. It's only insanity if you go back as the woman who left. Adrian sat across from her. But you're not her anymore. You're faster, stronger, smarter. You know what he is now. The fear is memory, Alara. It's not current reality. You don't know that. Don't I? He set his cup down with a soft click. Hit me. What? Right now. Hit me. Adrian, I'm not. You said the fear is still real. Prove it. If you're still that afraid, still that broken, you won't be able to do it. So hit me and let's see what happens. She stared at him. This man who'd spent 2 months teaching her violence, now using it as some kind of emotional litmus test. This is manipulative, she said. Absolutely. Hit me anyway. Something hot and frustrated surged through her chest. She stood up, set her stance like he'd taught her, and swung. He didn't block it. Her fist connected with his jaw, snapping his head to the side. For a moment, they both froze. Then Adrian straightened, working his jaw, and smiled. Actually smiled. Good. You're angry. Angry is useful. He touched his jaw gingerly. You've got a decent hook now, by the way. I just hit you. I noticed. You told me to. I did. And you did it without hesitation, without pulling the punch, without apologizing afterward. He picked up his coffee cup like nothing had happened. That's not a woman who's still broken, Alara. That's a woman who's ready to stop running. She sat back down slowly, her hand throbbing. I don't feel ready. No one ever does. Ready is something you discover in the moment, not before it. He took a sip, winced slightly. But for what it's worth, I think you're closer than you think. And if I'm not? If I go back and he... She couldn't finish the sentence. Then you leave, and we try something else. But Alara, he doesn't have the power you're giving him. Not anymore. He had it because you didn't know any better. Now you do. They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee, letting the night settle around them. I saw the documents, she said finally. In your operations room, the timeline of his projects, his partners, all of it. You're going to destroy him, aren't you? I'm going to give him the opportunity to destroy himself. Whether he takes it is up to him. And me? Where do I fit in that plan? Wherever you choose to fit. You can walk away tomorrow, disappear, start over somewhere new with resources and protection. Or you can stay, finish your training, and take back what's yours. His eyes met hers. I'm not going to tell you which choice is right. They're both valid. But you have a preference. I always have a preference, but my preference doesn't obligate you. She studied him in the dim kitchen light. This man who'd saved her for selfish reasons, who'd trained her with brutal efficiency, who'd never once pretended to be something he wasn't. Why do you care? She asked. Really? Not the strategic reasons, not the Victor offends your philosophy reasons. Why do you actually care what happens to me? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was lower, more genuine than she'd heard it. Because I've seen a lot of people give up, and I've seen a few people decide not to. The ones who don't give up, they're rare, worth investing in. He paused. And because you remind me of someone. Who? Someone who also had to learn that survival and living are different things. He didn't elaborate, and she didn't push. The next morning, she woke up with a clarity she hadn't felt in months. She found Adrian in the gym, already working through a solo routine. I want to go back, she said without preamble. He stopped mid-movement, looked at her. To Victor? To the house. Our house. His house. Whatever it is. She stepped onto the mat. But I want to do it right. I want to plan it, prepare for it. I want to walk in there and make him understand that I'm not afraid anymore. When? When you think I'm ready. When we've planned it properly. When I can walk in there and walk back out without needing rescue. Adrian's expression was unreadable. That's not a small ask. I know, but you said you'd teach me. So teach me how to do this. Something shifted in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. Okay, he said. But we do it my way. Complete preparation, every angle covered, every contingency planned. And if at any point you change your mind, I won't. If you do, he continued, you tell me. No shame, no judgment. This only works if you're choosing it freely. I understand. Good. He gestured to the mat. Then let's get started. If you're going to face him, you need to be able to handle anything he throws at you, literally and figuratively. The next 6 weeks were different from the previous 2 months. More focused, more intense, more specifically targeted at preparing her for one specific confrontation. Adrian brought in specialists, people who taught her how to read microexpressions, how to maintain composure under psychological pressure, how to control a conversation when someone was trying to control you. He'll try to trigger you, one of them said, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who apparently specialized in hostage negotiation. He'll use your mother, your past, your guilt. He'll try to make you doubt yourself, question your perception of reality. You need to recognize those tactics when they're happening. They ran scenarios over and over, with Adrian playing Victor, saying the exact things Victor would say, pushing the exact buttons Victor would push. You look terrible, Adrian said in one session, his voice taking on Victor's particular cadence. Whatever you've been doing, wherever you've been, it's not working. You need help, Ilara. Real help. Come home and we'll get you that help. The first time she'd felt her resolve waver. The 5th time she'd learned to hear the manipulation underneath the concern. By the 10th time she could smile and say, I'm exactly where I need to be. Thanks. Better, Dr. Chen said. But watch your hands. You're clenching when he mentions your mother. He'll see that and know he's getting to you. Physical training intensified too. Adrian taught her how to fight in confined spaces, how to use household objects as weapons, how to get out of holds and grabs. He's taller, heavier, trained in basic self-defense, Adrian said, demonstrating a grab. But you're faster, and you have the advantage of him underestimating you. Use that. She learned pressure points, vulnerable areas, how to cause maximum pain with minimum effort. You're not trying to win a fight, Adrian emphasized. You're trying to create space and opportunity. Hurt him enough to get away, not enough to escalate past your ability to control the situation. Week 12. Adrian declared her ready for the technical phase. They sat in his operations room, building the plan piece by piece. You'll go during the day, he said, moving pieces on a digital map. He has a standing meeting every Thursday at 2 p.m. It's usually off-site, gives you a window where the house is empty except for staff. Won't he have security? 2 guards, standard rotation. They're there to keep people out, not keep you in. They won't interfere with his wife coming home. Adrian pulled up building schematics. You'll enter through the front door. Your key still works. I had someone verify it. You'll go directly to his office, plant these. He showed her 3 small devices. Audio bugs, military grade. They'll give us everything we need to finalize the case against him. And if he comes home early, then you improvise. Everything we've trained for, you use. But the goal is in and out in 15 minutes, bugs planted, you're gone before he knows you were there. That's it? That's the plan. That's the reconnaissance mission. The actual confrontation comes later when we've gathered enough evidence to make him vulnerable. This is just establishing your ability to move through his space without fear. Alara looked at the map, at the house that had been her prison for 3 years, now reduced to a series of lines and waypoints. What if I freeze? She asked quietly. Then you unfreeze. But you won't. I've seen you fight through worse than this. You've seen me fight in a gym. This is different. Only because you're telling yourself it is. Adrian turned to face her fully. Alara, the house is a building. Victor is a man. Neither of them has power you don't give them. You've already taken back your power. This is just proving it to yourself. Thursday arrived faster than she wanted and slower than she could stand. Adrian drove her himself, in a nondescript sedan that probably cost more than most people's houses, but looked completely ordinary. You have the devices? He asked. She patted her jacket pocket. Yes. Phone? Yes. Emergency exit plan? South service door through the garden, car waiting 2 blocks east. Good. He pulled up to a spot 3 streets away from the house. 15 minutes, in and out. If anything feels wrong, I leave. I know. He looked at her for a long moment. You don't have to do this. Yeah, I do. No, you choose to. There's a difference. She smiled slightly. You're right. I choose to. Good. He handed her a small earpiece. I'll be listening. Not talking unless you need me, but I'm there. She put in the earpiece, took a breath that didn't quite fill her lungs, and got out of the car. The walk to the house felt surreal. These streets she'd walked 1,000 times. These trees she'd seen change with the seasons. This sidewalk where she'd once pretended everything was fine, while her ribs ached from where Victor had shoved her into a counter. The house looked exactly the same. Red brick, white trim, the kind of place that screamed old money and good taste. The kind of place where nothing bad could possibly happen. She walked up the steps, pulled out her key, and stopped. Her hand was shaking. Breathe, Adrian's voice said quietly in her ear. Just breathe. She breathed, centered herself the way he'd taught her, found that place of calm underneath the fear. The key slid into the lock, turned. The door opened. She stepped inside. The house smelled the same, that specific combination of expensive cleaning products and Victor's cologne and something else she'd never been able to identify. The furniture was arranged exactly as she remembered. The art on the walls hadn't changed. Even the flowers on the hall table were the same type, white roses, replaced weekly. It was like she'd never left. Except she had. And the woman walking through this hallway now wasn't the woman who'd run out of it 2 months ago. She moved through the house with purpose, checking rooms quickly, efficiently. Empty. The security guards were outside, just like Adrian had said. The staff was out. Thursday was their afternoon off, a pattern Victor had established years ago. She climbed the stairs to his office, each step feeling heavier and lighter at the same time. The office door was unlocked. She pushed it open. Victor's domain. Massive desk, leather chairs, walls lined with books he'd never read, and degrees he'd bought. This was where he conducted business, where he made phone calls that destroyed companies and people with equal indifference. This was where he'd told her 3 years ago that she was lucky he'd married her, that no one else would have put up with her anxiety, her neediness, her fundamental inadequacy. She'd believed him then. She didn't now. Alara moved to the desk, planted the first bug underneath exactly where Adrian had instructed. The second went behind a bookshelf. The third in the air vent. 12 minutes. She was turning to leave when she heard it. The front door opening, footsteps in the hallway, Victor's voice talking to someone on the phone. I don't care what the inspector says. Make it work. I'm not losing that contract because some bureaucrat suddenly found his conscience. He was early. Alara's heart rate spiked. Every instinct screamed at her to find the exit, to run, to hide. But she didn't. She stayed exactly where she was, standing in his office, and waited. The footsteps came up the stairs, down the hall, stopped at the office door. Victor pushed it open, still on his phone, and froze. They stared at each other across the space of his office. He was exactly as she remembered, tall, handsome in that sharp-featured way, wearing a suit that probably cost $5,000. His expression cycled through surprise, relief, calculation, and settled on concerned husband. I'll call you back, he said into the phone. Ended the call, set it down carefully on the desk. Alara. His voice was warm, soft, everything she'd once thought meant love. Thank God, I've been so worried. Have you? Her voice came out steady. That surprised her. Of course I have, sweetheart. Where have you been? Are you okay? You look. He moved toward her, hands outstretched. She stepped back. He stopped, registered the movement, recalculated. It's okay, he said, like he was talking to something wild that might bolt. I'm not angry. I know you've been confused, stressed. Everything that happened, it was my fault. I pushed too hard. I should have been more understanding. It was textbook. Everything Dr. Chen had said he'd do, he was doing. I'm not confused, Alara said. No, of course not. You're stressed. It's been a difficult time. He gestured to the chairs. Sit, please. Let's talk about this. I don't want to sit. Okay, we'll stand. He smiled, that smile she'd once found charming. I'm just glad you're here. You're home. That's what matters. This isn't my home. Something flickered across his face. Gone in an instant, but she saw it. Irritation, anger, the mask slipping just slightly. Of course it is. This is our home, our life. Everything I've built has been for us. He took another step closer. Whatever happened, wherever you've been, it doesn't matter. We can work through this. I can help you. I don't need your help. Alara, sweetheart, yes you do. Look at you. You're shaking. You're scared. Let me help you. That's all I've ever wanted to do. He was right about one thing. She was shaking, but not from fear, from rage. You're lying, she said clearly. You've always been lying. His expression shifted, less warm, more clinical. Who told you that? Someone's been filling your head with ideas, turning you against me. Was it a therapist? Some friend? His eyes narrowed. Where have you been staying? Does it matter? It matters because whoever's been influencing you has done damage. Real damage. You need professional help, Alara. Real help, not whatever amateur psychology you've been exposed to. He was trying to make her doubt herself, trying to make her question her own perception. She could see it happening, could see the mechanics of it. It didn't work. I'm leaving now, she said. No. The word came out harder. He caught himself, softened. No, you're not. You're going to sit down, we're going to talk about this like adults, and we're going to figure out how to get you the care you need. I said I'm leaving. She moved toward the door. He moved to block it. Alara, I'm trying to be patient here, but you're not thinking clearly. You need move. Not until we've talked this through. The situation crystallized. She was in his office, he was blocking the exit, and he thought she was still the woman who'd folded under pressure. She wasn't. Move, she said again, or I'll move you. He laughed, actually laughed. Sweetheart, you're not going to… She didn't let him finish. 3 months of training, hundreds of hours in the gym, everything Adrian had taught her about reading people and exploiting weaknesses, it all came together in one smooth motion. She faked left, he shifted to compensate, and she drove her palm into his solar plexus exactly like she'd been taught. Victor staggered back, gasping. She walked past him, out the door, down the stairs. Behind her, she could hear him recovering, could hear his footsteps following. Alara! God damn it, Alara! Get back here! She didn't run. Running would be giving him what he expected. She walked. Out the front door, down the steps, along the sidewalk. You can't just leave! His voice behind her, louder now, desperate. You're my wife! You're sick! Someone help me! She turned, looked at him standing on the steps of the house that was supposed to be her cage. I was never yours, she said, and I'm done pretending otherwise. Then she walked away. He didn't follow. The car was where Adrian said it would be, 2 blocks east. She got in, pulled the door shut, and only then did she start shaking. Not from fear. From the realization that she'd done it. She'd walked back into that house, faced the man who'd spent 3 years tearing her down, and walked back out on her own terms. Adrian was waiting when she got back to the estate. He took one look at her face and nodded. You did it. He came home early. I heard. He gestured to his ear. He'd been listening the whole time. You handled it. I hit him. You defended yourself. There's a difference. He walked with her toward the house. How do you feel? She thought about it. Expected to feel triumphant, vindicated, powerful. Instead, she just felt tired. Empty. she said. Good. Revenge feels like that when you actually get it. Hollow. Adrian held the door open for her, which means you're ready for the next part. Which is? Deciding what you actually want, not what you're running from, not what you're fighting against, what you want to run toward. They walked inside, and Alara realized he was right. She'd spent 3 years being Victor's wife, 2 months being Adrian's student. Now she had to figure out who she was when she wasn't defined by either of them. That night, alone in her room, she looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was different from the one who'd hidden under a table 8 weeks ago. Stronger, leaner, carrying herself differently. But more than that, she was looking back. Not down, not away. Back. And that, Alara thought, was worth every bruise, every aching muscle, every sleepless night. She'd learned to stand still. Now she just had to figure out where to stand. The question sat with her for days. Adrian didn't push for an answer, didn't manufacture urgency where none existed. He simply continued their routine, training in the mornings, strategic sessions in the afternoons, those midnight conversations in the kitchen when neither of them could sleep. But something had shifted between them after the house visit. A boundary had dissolved, though Alara couldn't identify exactly when or how. She noticed it first in small things. The way Adrian's hand lingered half a second longer when he steadied her during training. How his eyes tracked her movements even when he was supposedly focused on something else. The way conversations that started about strategy somehow drifted into territory that had nothing to do with Victor or power dynamics or any of the technical skills he was teaching her. Tell me something, he said one night in the kitchen around 3 a.m. If you could do anything, go anywhere, be anyone, what would you choose? Alara looked up from her coffee. That's a hell of a question for 3 in the morning. That's when the honest answers come out, the middle of the night, when your defenses are down and you're too tired to perform. He leaned against the counter, watching her with that unreadable expression he wore so well. So, I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead. Liar. You've been thinking about it constantly. I can see it in how you move through the house now, like you're already halfway gone. He was right, which was annoying. Maybe I want to teach, she said slowly. Not in a school, but women like I was. Women who need to learn what you taught me. Self-defense? More than that, how to recognize manipulation, how to rebuild themselves, how to stop being afraid of their own power. She traced the rim of her cup. Is that stupid? No, it's specific, achievable, and fills a genuine need. That's the opposite of stupid. Adrian moved to sit across from her. You'd be good at it. How do you know? Because you remember what it felt like to be helpless. The best teachers are the ones who've actually survived what they're teaching others to survive. He paused. Is that what you want? To build that? I think so. Maybe. I don't know. She met his eyes. What do you want, Adrian? You've spent 3 months teaching me to figure out what I want, but you never talk about yourself. I have what I want. Empire, power, influence, the ability to make things happen with a phone call. That's not an answer. That's a resume. His mouth quirked slightly. Fair point. He was quiet for a moment, considering. I want to matter. Not in the way Victor matters, where it's all performance and ego. I want the work I do to actually change things, leave the world different than I found it. And does it, the work you do? Sometimes. I've dismantled worse operations than Victor's, redirected money that would have funded genuinely evil things, protected people who couldn't protect themselves. He shrugged. But I've also done things I'm not proud of. Made compromises. Justified methods I shouldn't have. It's complicated. You're complicated. Everyone is. Most people just hide it better. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only happens between people who've spent enough time together to not need constant conversation. I should probably leave soon, Alara said eventually. Not tonight, but soon. Start actually building whatever comes next instead of just hiding here. You're not hiding, you're preparing. Semantics. Important semantics? Adrian's gaze was steady on hers. But you're right, you're ready. Have been for a while, actually. I've just been selfish about admitting it. That surprised her. Selfish? How? I like having you here. The house is less empty with you in it. The conversations are better. You push back on me in ways most people don't. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. So yes, selfish. I'd keep you here longer if I thought it would actually help you, but at this point it's just me not wanting you to leave. The admission hung in the air between them, more honest than she'd expected. I like being here, she said quietly. That's the problem. Why is that a problem? Because I came here running from one man, and I can't build my life around another one. Even if… She stopped. Even if what? Even if I'm starting to feel things I shouldn't. Even if midnight conversations feel more real than anything I experienced in 3 years of marriage. Even if the way you look at me makes me forget that I'm supposed to be focused on rebuilding myself, not wondering what would happen if I crossed this room and kissed you. She didn't say any of that. Even if it's comfortable here, she finished, comfort can be its own kind of cage. Adrian studied her for a long moment, and she had the unsettling feeling he'd heard everything she hadn't said. Then go, he said. When you're ready, leave. Build what you want to build. I'll give you resources, connections, whatever you need to start. He paused. But Ilara, understand something. You leaving doesn't mean this ends, whatever this is. What is this? I don't know yet, but I'd like the chance to find out when you're ready to find out too. Her heart was doing something arrhythmic in her chest. That's not fair. You can't just what? Be honest about wanting something? You spent 3 years with a man who turned everyone into a weapon. I'm not him. When I want something, I say it directly. His eyes hadn't left hers. I want you. Not as a student, not as a project, not as someone I'm protecting. I want you as someone I enjoy, respect, and would very much like to take to bed. But I want you to want that too, freely, without any of the power dynamics or debt or gratitude confusing things. Ilara's breath caught. She should say something, should establish boundaries, should be smart about this, should remember all the very good reasons why getting involved with Adrian Cade was a terrible idea. Instead, she stood up, walked around the counter, and kissed him. For half a second, he was still, surprised. Then his hand came up to cup the back of her head, his other arm wrapped around her waist, and he kissed her back with an intensity that made her knees weak. It wasn't gentle, wasn't tentative or careful or any of the things a first kiss probably should be. It was hungry and certain, and felt like falling and flying at the same time. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian's eyes were dark. That was a mistake, Ilara finished, stepping back. I shouldn't have… If you say you shouldn't have done that, I'm going to be very disappointed in your honesty. His hand was still on her waist, keeping her from retreating completely. You wanted to. I wanted to. We did. Those are just facts. Facts that complicate everything. Only if we let them. He released her, giving her space. But I meant what I said. I'm not going to push for more than you want to give. If that was a one-time thing, fine. If it's the beginning of something, also fine. You decide. Just like that? Just like that. I don't do games, Ilara. Life's too short, and I'm too old for pretending I don't want things I want. She stared at him, this man who'd just upended her carefully maintained emotional distance with brutal honesty, and a kiss that had felt like coming home and running away at the same time. I need to think, she said. Take all the time you need. She went back to her room, lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and absolutely did not think about the way Adrian's hands had felt on her waist, or how his mouth had tasted like coffee and certainty. The next morning, training was exactly the same as always. Adrian didn't reference the kiss, didn't treat her differently, didn't create any awkwardness that wasn't already there by virtue of Ilara being hyper-aware of every accidental touch. You're distracted, he said after she missed a block for the third time. What's going on? Nothing. Try again. I'm just tired. You're thinking too hard about something that isn't this mat. Either deal with it or set it aside, but don't split your attention. That's how you get hurt. He was right, which made her want to hit him. So she did, channeling all her frustration into a combination that actually made him work to defend. Better, he said, breathing slightly harder. Whatever you're angry about, use it. They sparred for another hour, and by the end, Ilara was too physically exhausted to be mentally tangled. Good session, Adrian said, tossing her a towel. You're getting faster. Or you're getting slower. That's deeply insulting and statistically improbable. But he smiled slightly. Take the afternoon off. You've earned it. She spent the afternoon in the gardens, trying to organize thoughts that refused to organize. The truth was simple and complicated at the same time. She was attracted to Adrian. Had been for weeks, if she was honest with herself. But attraction built in captivity, even comfortable captivity, wasn't trustworthy. She needed distance to know if what she felt was real or just gratitude wrapped in proximity, which meant she needed to leave. The realization settled heavy in her chest. That night, she found Adrian in his office and knocked on the open door. "Can we talk?" He looked up from whatever he was working on. "Of course, come in." She sat in the chair across from his desk, the same chair she'd sat in a dozen times while he taught her how to read financial statements and spot manipulation tactics. "I'm leaving," she said. "Not tonight, but soon. A week, maybe 2. I need to start building something that's mine." Adrian leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Okay. That's it? Just okay? What else would you like me to say? That I disagree? I don't. That I want you to stay? I do, but not at the cost of you actually living your life." And he paused. "Where will you go?" "I don't know yet. Somewhere I can start setting up the training program I mentioned. Somewhere Victor can't find me easily. Somewhere that's mine. I can help with that. Property, funding, connections to the right people. I know you can, but I need to do some of it myself. Otherwise, it's just another version of being taken care of." "Fair." He pulled out a card from his desk drawer, slid it across to her. "Bank account. It's yours. Enough money to start whatever you're building and live comfortably while you build it. Not alone, not conditional. Yours." Alara stared at the card. "Adrian, I can't." "You can, and you will. Because I told you I'd give you resources to start over, and I keep my word." His voice was firm. "This isn't charity or control. It's an investment in something I believe in. You." She picked up the card, feeling its weight. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I can. Because you've earned it. Because watching you walk out of Victor's house that day was the most satisfying thing I've seen in years, and I want to see what you do next." He met her eyes. "And because I care about what happens to you, even if you're not here." The kiss doesn't change anything unless you want it to. You can leave, build your life, never see me again. Or you can leave, build your life, and maybe we figure out what this is when you're on solid ground. He shrugged. "Either way, the money's yours." Alara felt something crack in her chest. "You're impossible." "I've been told that before." "I'm serious. You're offering me everything I need to leave, no strings attached, after admitting you want me to stay. That's complicated. I know, but it's honest, and I'd rather be honest and complicated than simple and manipulative." Adrian stood, walked around the desk, leaned against it in front of her. "Alara, if you stay because I made you financially dependent on staying, that's just Victor with better manners. I don't want that. I want you to choose me. If you choose me, because you actually want to, not because you need to. And if I don't choose you, then I'll be disappointed, but I'll survive. I survived 35 years before you crawled under my table. I can survive whatever comes after you leave." His voice was steady, certain. "But I hope you do. Choose me, I mean. Eventually. When you're ready." She stood and suddenly they were very close. Close enough that she could smell his cologne and see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "I need time," she said. "Take it. I need space. You'll have it. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not defined by the men in my life." "You should. Stop agreeing with me. It's making this harder." "What do you want me to say? That you're wrong?" "You're not." He lifted his hand, hesitated, then brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I want you, Alara, but I want you whole, not broken and dependent. So go. Build your life. Become whoever you're going to become. And if, when you're done, you want to come back and see if this thing between us is real, I'll be here." She kissed him again. Couldn't help it. This time it was slower, deeper, tinged with something that felt like goodbye and promise tangled together. When they broke apart, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. 2 weeks, he said quietly. 2 weeks, she agreed. The next 13 days passed in a strange suspension of time. They maintained routines, training, strategy sessions, midnight conversations. But everything felt different, weighted with awareness and impending absence. Adrian helped her plan. Found a property in a city 3 hours north, an old community center that could be converted into a training facility. Connected her with contractors, lawyers, people who could help her establish the nonprofit structure she'd need. "This is your board of directors," he said one afternoon, showing her a list of names. "All of them vetted, all of them genuinely interested in the mission. You'll need to interview them, make sure they're a fit, but they're a good starting point." "How did you find these people so fast?" "I made some calls, asked some favors. People who owe me, people who believe in what you're building." He scrolled through the list. "This one, Margaret Chen, she runs a women's shelter. She'll understand what you're trying to do better than most." Alara looked at the list, at this infrastructure he'd assembled for her dream in less than 2 weeks. "Thank you," she said inadequately. "Don't thank me. Just build something that matters." On the 13th night, she found him in the kitchen as usual, but instead of coffee, he was drinking whiskey. "Celebrating or mourning?" she asked. "Neither. Just drinking." He poured a second glass, slid it to her. "Last night. Seemed appropriate to break the coffee routine." She took the glass, sat across from him. "I'm terrified." "Good. If you weren't terrified, you wouldn't be taking it seriously." "What if I fail? What if I can't actually do this?" "Then you fail and try something else." "Failure isn't fatal, Alara. It's just expensive." He took a sip. "But you won't fail. You're too stubborn." "That's not exactly a ringing endorsement." "It's the highest compliment I know how to give. Stubborn people change the world. Comfortable people maintain it." They drank in silence for a while. "I'm going to miss this," Alara said finally. "These conversations, this kitchen, you. I'm going to miss you too." He said it simply, without elaboration. "But I'd rather miss you and know you're out there building something than have you here and watch you stagnate." "When did you get so wise about letting people go?" "I'm not wise about it. I'm just experienced." Something shifted in his expression. "I've lost things before. People. Opportunities. The loss doesn't get easier, but you learn how to carry it." She wanted to ask what he'd lost, who he'd been before he became Adrian Cade, crime lord and midnight philosopher. But the question felt too heavy for their last night. Instead, she raised her glass. "To new beginnings." He clinked his glass against hers. "To choosing fire over safety." They finished the whiskey, talked about logistics, when she'd leave, how she'd stay in touch, safety protocols in case Victor came looking. Then, around 2 a.m., Adrian stood. "I should let you get some sleep. You have a long drive tomorrow." Alara stood too. "Adrian?" "Yeah?" "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "If I do come back, later, when I've built something, when I've figured out who I am, will you still want this? Want me?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Yes." "Next question." "No, next question. I just needed to know." "Now you know." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "Alara, one more thing." "What?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For crawling under my table that night, for trusting me enough to stay, for reminding me that some things are worth the investment." His smile was small, genuine. "You made the last 3 months significantly less boring." "That's the second highest compliment you know how to give, isn't it?" "It is." She crossed the room, kissed him one more time. Not desperate or hungry like before, but soft, deliberate. A promise instead of a goodbye. "I'll see you," she said. "I'm counting on it." Then he left, and Alara stood alone in the kitchen where she'd spent dozens of nights rebuilding herself piece by piece. Morning came too fast. Her bags were already packed, already loaded in the car Adrian had bought for her. Nothing flashy, reliable, and anonymous. He'd wanted to give her something expensive. She'd insisted on something practical. They'd compromised on something in between. She found him in the gym, going through his usual routine. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." He didn't stop moving. "Car's ready. Tank's full. I had Marco put an emergency kit in the trunk, cash, burner phone, first aid supplies. Probably overkill, but better prepared than sorry. Very on brand for you. Consistency is important." He finished his set, grabbed a towel. "You have the address?" "Programmed in my phone." "Property manager knows you're coming?" "Meeting me at noon." Bank card? In my wallet. He nodded, checking off some internal list. Then he just stood there, looking at her. This is harder than I thought it would be, he said finally. For me, too. Good. I'd hate to be suffering alone. She smiled despite the tightness in her throat. I should go, before I lose my nerve. You won't lose your nerve, but yes, you should go. He walked her to the front door where her car was waiting. Rosalind was there too, along with Marco and Dr. Shen, and even a few other staff members Alara had gotten to know over the past months. They'd come to say goodbye. You take care of yourself, Dr. Shen said, hugging her briefly. And if you need anything, medical advice, referrals for your program, anything, you call me. I will, thank you. Marco gave her an awkward fist bump. You got scary good in the ring, made me work for it. You let me win half those matches. Only the first dozen. He grinned. After that, you earned them. Rosalind was last. She didn't hug, just looked Alara over with that same assessing gaze from 3 months ago. You'll do well, she said. You're tougher than you think. I learned from tough people. Damn right you did. For the first time since Alara had met her, Rosalind smiled. Make us proud. Then it was just Adrian walking her to the car. I don't know what to say, Alara admitted. Then don't say anything. Just drive safe, call when you get there, and build something that scares you. That's very specific advice. I'm a specific person. He opened the car door for her. Alara? Yeah? When you're ready, and only when you're ready, come back. I'll be here. She wanted to say something profound, something that captured what the last 3 months had meant. But all she managed was, I know. Then she got in the car, started the engine, and drove away from the estate that had been her refuge and training ground and the place where she'd learned to be someone other than Victor's broken wife. In the rearview mirror, she watched Adrian standing in the driveway, hands in his pockets, watching her leave. She didn't cry until she was 10 miles down the highway. The city 3 hours north was smaller than she'd expected, the kind of place where people still said hello on the street and knew their neighbors' names. The community center Adrian had found was perfect. Large enough for her vision, run down enough to be affordable, positioned in a neighborhood that needed exactly what she wanted to build. The property manager, a woman in her 50s named Paula, showed her around. Previous owner used it for youth programs, Paula explained. Basketball, after-school care, that kind of thing. Went under during the pandemic, been sitting empty since. It's structurally sound, just needs cosmetic work and updated equipment. Alara walked through the space, seeing past the water stains and peeling paint to what it could become. Training mats here, office space there, a quiet room for counseling, a larger room for group sessions. I'll take it, she said. Paula blinked. Don't you want to think about it? See other properties? No, this is it. This is perfect. Signing the lease felt surreal. Writing her own name on legal documents, making decisions without checking with anyone, committing to something that was entirely hers. That night, alone in the small apartment she'd rented above a coffee shop, Alara called Adrian. He answered on the first ring. You made it. I made it. The property is perfect. I'm signing the lease tomorrow. Good. Send me the details and I'll have my lawyers review it. Adrian, I can handle. I know you can. But humor me. One last thing, then I'll back off and let you build this yourself. She smiled despite herself. One last thing. One last thing, he agreed. How are you feeling? Terrified? Excited? Lonely? Hopeful? All of it at once. That sounds about right. She heard ice clinking in a glass on his end. The kitchen's too quiet without you. Find someone else to have midnight conversations with. Not the same. You argue better than most people. They talked for another hour, about nothing important and everything important. When they finally hung up, Alara felt less alone. The weeks that followed were a blur of permits and contractors and late nights planning curriculum. She interviewed the board members Adrian had connected her with, hired a therapist to consult on trauma-informed practices, started reaching out to women's shelters and advocacy groups to build referral networks. Margaret Chen, the shelter director Adrian had recommended, became an unexpected mentor. What you're building is important, Margaret said over coffee one afternoon. Most self-defense programs teach women how to fight off strangers. But statistically, the violence we face comes from people we know, partners, family members, People who have psychological power over us. Teaching women to defend against that. That's revolutionary. I'm just teaching what I learned. From Adrian Cade, I understand. Margaret's eyes were sharp. That's an interesting education. It was necessary. I'm sure it was. And I'm not judging. I'm just saying, be careful. Men like him, they help because it serves them. Make sure you know what you're paying for that help. I'm not paying anything. He gave me resources, no strings attached. There are always strings, honey. Sometimes they're just invisible until you try to walk away. The words stayed with Alara longer than she wanted them to. Was Margaret right? Had Adrian's help come with invisible strings? Was she building this on a foundation that would collapse if she didn't maintain the relationship he wanted? She didn't have answers. What she did have was a training center that was slowly taking shape, a mission that felt real and important, and the knowledge that for the first time in years, she was building something that belonged entirely to her. 6 weeks after leaving Adrian's estate, the center opened for its first trial class. 5 women showed up, all of them referred by Margaret Shelter, all of them carrying the same wariness Alara recognized from her own mirror 3 months ago. "My name is Alara," she said, standing in front of them. "I'm not a therapist, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to tell you what to do or how to fix your life. What I am is someone who spent 3 years married to a man who used fear as a weapon. And I'm someone who learned that fear is just information, not truth. Over the next 8 weeks, I'm going to teach you what I learned. How to read manipulation, how to defend yourself physically and psychologically, how to stop apologizing for taking up space." She saw recognition in their eyes, saw them sitting up straighter, leaning in. "This isn't easy work," she continued. "It's going to hurt sometimes. You're going to want to quit. You're going to get angry and scared and frustrated. That's normal. But if you stick with it, you're going to leave here different than you came in, stronger, clearer, more yourselves." One woman raised her hand. "What if we can't do it? What if we're just not built for this?" Alara smiled, remembering asking Adrian the same question. "Then we'll find out together. But I don't think you're here because you're not built for this. I think you're here because some part of you already knows you are. We just have to convince the rest of you." The class ran long, everyone too engaged to watch the clock. When they finally finished, the women left looking tired but different. Lighter, maybe. More present. Alara locked up, sat in the empty training room, and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. That night she called Adrian. "First class went well," she said when he answered. "I knew it would. Tell me about it." She told him everything, the women who'd shown up, the exercises she'd taught, the moment when she'd seen one of them land a solid hit and start laughing with surprise at her own power. "You sound happy," Adrian said when she finished. "I am. It's exactly what I wanted to build." "Good. You've earned it." He paused. "I'm proud of you, Alara." The words hit harder than she expected. "Thank you. I mean it. What you're doing matters." They talked until late, and when Alara finally hung up, she realized Margaret was wrong. The strings weren't invisible. They were there, absolutely. A connection between her and Adrian that distance hadn't broken. But they weren't restraints. They were lifelines. And maybe, she thought, that was the difference. Maybe choosing to stay connected to someone who'd helped you wasn't the same as being controlled by them. Maybe freedom wasn't about cutting every tie. Maybe it was about choosing which ones to keep. She fell asleep thinking about Adrian in his too-quiet kitchen, drinking coffee at 3 a.m., waiting for her to be ready. And for the first time, she let herself imagine what it might look like when she was 3 months became 6. 6 became 9. The training center grew beyond what Alara had imagined. What started as one class of 5 women became 3 classes of 12, then 5 classes, then a waiting list. Women came from shelters, from referrals, from seeing the small sign she'd hung outside that simply said, "Learn to take up space." She hired 2 instructors, both women with their own stories, their own scars. Maria had been a competitive boxer before her ex-husband broke her hand in 4 places and told her she'd never fight again. She'd proven him wrong. Tasha was a former Marine who'd survived military sexual assault and spent years learning how to trust her own strength again. Together, they built something that wasn't just about self-defense. It was about rewiring the fundamental assumption that safety meant making yourself smaller. Defense is just the beginning, Alara told each new group. What we're really teaching you is that you deserve to exist loudly, that taking up space isn't selfish, that your fear doesn't make you weak. What you do with that fear is what matters. The words were Adrian's, filtered through her own experience. She thought about him often, especially late at night when the center was empty and she was doing paperwork in her small office. They still talked regularly, weekly calls that sometimes lasted hours, sometimes just minutes. He never asked when she was coming back, never pressured, just listened to her talk about the women she was teaching, the small victories, the hard days. One of my students confronted her ex today, she told him during one of those calls, about 8 months in. In court. Restraining order hearing. She said she kept hearing my voice in her head saying fear is just information, and it got her through the testimony. How'd it go? She got the order. Full year. No contact. Ilara leaned back in her chair. She cried afterward. Not from fear, from relief. Like she'd finally proved to herself that she could do hard things. That's you, Adrian said. That's what you built. I just showed her what was already there. Same thing I did with you. Doesn't make it less significant. She heard him moving around, probably in that kitchen. You sound tired. I am tired. Good tired, but tired. She rubbed her eyes. How are things there? Busy. Victor's Philadelphia project finally imploded last month. Spectacular collapse, federal investigation, the works. He's trying to contain it, but he's hemorrhaging partners. Ilara felt a twinge of something that wasn't quite satisfaction. You did that. I created circumstances. He did the rest himself. Adrian paused. He's been asking about you. Not directly, but putting out feelers, trying to figure out where you went. Has he found anything? No. And he won't. I've made sure of that. His voice was matter of fact. But Ilara, eventually he's going to stop looking for you and start looking for closure. Men like him don't handle loose ends well. You should be prepared for him to reach out. I am prepared. I'm not the same person who ran from him. I know. But knowing something intellectually and facing it emotionally are different things. Just be careful. Always. She smiled despite the heaviness of the topic. When's the last time you slept? Define sleep. More than 3 hours consecutively. Then it's been a while. He sounded amused. Are you mothering me, Ilara? Someone should. You're terrible at taking care of yourself. I have people for that. Having people and actually letting them take care of you are different things. Fair point. She heard liquid pouring, coffee, probably. I miss you. The words landed soft but deliberate. He said them sometimes, never demanding a response, just stating fact. I miss you too, she said, like she always did. But I'm not ready yet. I know. I'm patient. Are you? Or are you just stubborn? Both. They're not mutually exclusive. They talked for another hour, about nothing and everything. When they hung up, Ilara sat in her empty office and let herself imagine just for a moment what it would be like to go back, to see him in person instead of through a phone, to finish what they'd started in that kitchen 9 months ago. But not yet. She still had work to do here, on herself, on the center, on proving that she could build something that lasted without needing rescue or support or safety nets. The call from Victor came 2 weeks later. Ilara was in the middle of teaching a class when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She ignored it. 15 minutes later, it buzzed again. Same number. After class, she checked her voicemail. Ilara, it's me. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but we need to talk. There are things, legal things, financial things, that we need to resolve. I'm not angry. I'm not trying to force you to come back. I just need closure on some items. Please call me back. His voice was measured, reasonable, the tone he used when he was trying to sound non-threatening while absolutely being a threat. She deleted the voicemail and called Adrian. He contacted you, Adrian said immediately, not even greeting her. How did you? Because his lawyer filed a petition this morning to have you declared legally incompetent. He's going for conservatorship over your assets and medical decisions. Adrian's voice was tight. It's a power play. If he can't find you, he'll use the legal system to force you out of hiding. Ilara felt cold. Can he do that? He can try. It won't work. You're demonstrably competent, gainfully employed, living independently, but the process itself is designed to be invasive and expensive. He's betting you'll contact him to make it stop, which is exactly what he wants. Exactly. Adrian paused. But Ilara, there's an alternative. Which is? You file for divorce first. on grounds of abuse, with documentation. His voice shifted, became more businesslike. I've spent 9 months collecting evidence, financial records showing his laundering operations, testimony from his former employees about his methods, medical records from your stitches that night, the recording from the bugs you planted in his office, all of it building a case that he's both an abuser and a criminal. You've been building a case against him this whole time? I told you I would. I keep my word. He let that sit for a moment. If you file with this evidence, he'll have no choice but to settle quickly and quietly, because the alternative is everything going public, and he can't afford that right now, not with the federal investigation already circling. Ilara sat down slowly. You want me to destroy him. I want to give you the option to destroy him. What you do with that option is up to you. She thought about Victor, about 3 years of systematic cruelty disguised as love, about the glass that had cut her side, the voice that had convinced her she was incompetent, the isolation that had stripped away everyone who might have helped her see the truth sooner. She thought about the women in her classes, the ones who'd been exactly where she was, who'd escaped and rebuilt, and were learning to trust themselves again. If I do this, she said slowly, I want to do it in person. I want him to see me, to understand that I'm not afraid anymore. That's risky. I know, but I need it for me. She took a breath. Will you help me plan it? Of course, but Ilara, I know what I'm asking, and I know the risks, but I spent 3 years being afraid of him. I won't spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder wondering if he'll find me. I need to end this definitively. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Okay, come back. We'll plan it properly, cover every angle, make sure you're safe. But we do this right. When? Whenever you're ready. She looked around her office at the life she'd built, the mission she'd created. It would still be here when she got back. The center had staff now, systems, sustainability. She could step away for a few weeks. She could face this. I'll be there tomorrow, she said. The drive back to Adrian's estate felt different than the drive away had. Then, she'd been running toward possibility. Now she was driving toward resolution. He was waiting when she pulled up, standing in the same spot where he'd watched her leave 9 months ago. But something in his posture was different, less controlled, more openly relieved. She got out of the car, and before she could say anything, he'd crossed the distance between them and pulled her into a hug that felt like coming home and starting over at the same time. You're here, he said against her hair. I'm here. She pulled back slightly to look at him. You look terrible. Have you been sleeping at all? You sound like you've been talking to someone who cares about my sleep schedule. I have been. She's very concerned. He smiled, actually smiled, and it transformed his face. I missed you. You said that on the phone. Saying it in person is different. He released her but kept one hand on her waist, like he needed the physical confirmation she was real. Come inside. We have work to do. The operations room was more elaborate than she remembered. Multiple screens, files stacked on every surface, a timeline on the wall that tracked Victor's activities for the past 9 months. You've been busy, she said. Obsessively so, according to Roslyn. Adrian pulled up a chair for her. But it paid off. We have everything we need. He walked her through it methodically. The evidence of money laundering, the witnesses willing to testify, the documentation of his abuse toward her, the legal strategy that would force him to settle or face complete exposure. The divorce itself is straightforward, Adrian explained. No fault filing, irreconcilable differences, whatever generic language makes it simple. But attached to that filing is a sealed declaration detailing the abuse, with an affidavit from Dr. Shen about treating your injuries and a note that additional evidence exists if the divorce is contested. So I'm threatening him. You're establishing boundaries with consequences. There's a difference. Adrian pulled up another document. But if you want to actually see him, to confront him directly, we need to be more careful about how we arrange that. I want him to know it's over. Not from a lawyer, from me. Then we set up a meeting, neutral ground, security present, every word recorded. You tell him it's finished, hand him the divorce papers, and walk away. Clean, final, safe. Ilara studied the plan, looking for holes. What if he tries to hurt me? He won't. Not with witnesses and cameras, and the knowledge that any violence against you gets added to the already substantial evidence we have. Adrian's voice was certain. But I'll be there. Not in the room, but close. If anything goes wrong, you'll handle it. Exactly. They spent the next 3 days preparing. Adrian brought in the same specialists who'd trained her before, running scenarios, anticipating Victor's responses, making sure she was ready for every possible angle. He'll try to make you feel guilty, Dr. Chen said during one session. He'll say you abandoned him, that you owe him an explanation, that you're being cruel. Don't engage with that. You don't owe him anything. Maria, who'd driven up to help with the physical training, was more direct. If he touches you, break his hand. Don't hesitate. Don't apologize. Just break it. I'm not planning to get close enough for that. Plans change. Be prepared anyway. The meeting was set for Saturday, 2 p.m., at a law office Adrian had selected. Neutral territory, security-grade cameras, soundproofing that would contain whatever happened. Friday night, Alara couldn't sleep. She found Adrian in the kitchen, same as always, coffee in hand. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. I'm considering just giving up on the concept entirely. He poured her a cup without asking. How are you feeling? Terrified. Ready. Both. She sat down across from him. What if I freeze? What if I see him and just revert? You won't. How do you know? Because I've watched you teach dozens of women how to reclaim their power. Because you've built something real and sustainable and important. Because you're not the woman who hid under my table anymore, Alara. You haven't been her for a long time. She wanted to believe him. Mostly, she did. What happens after? She asked. After tomorrow? After the divorce is final? After all of this is done? Adrian looked at her steadily. That depends on what you want. I want to go back to my center, continue the work. Okay. But I also want... She stopped, uncertain. Want what? This. You. Whatever this is. She met his eyes. I've had 9 months to figure out who I am without you, and I'm proud of who that person is. But I also know that when I talk to you, when I'm here, I'm more myself than I am anywhere else. And I don't think that's dependence. I think that's just connection. Adrian set down his cup carefully. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I'm ready to try this, to see if what we have is real outside of crisis and training and middle-of-the-night conversations. She took a breath. I'm saying I choose you, if you still want to be chosen. He was around the table and pulling her into his arms before she'd finished the sentence. The kiss was different from the ones 9 months ago, less desperate, more certain, like they'd both been waiting for this exact moment, and now that it was here, they could finally breathe. I want to be chosen, he said when they broke apart. I've wanted that since the moment you took my hand and decided to stop running. That feels like a lifetime ago. It was a lifetime ago. You've had at least 3 lifetimes since then. He rested his forehead against hers. But Alara, I need you to understand something. I'm not easy to be with. I keep terrible hours. I'm obsessive about work. I have enemies that occasionally become problems. And I'm never going to be the soft, comforting presence you might want sometimes. I don't want soft and comforting. I want real. And you're the most real person I've ever met. Then we'll figure it out, together. He kissed her again, slower this time. But first tomorrow. We end this thing with Victor, and then we start whatever comes next. Deal. They stayed in the kitchen until dawn, talking about logistics and feelings and futures with equal weight. When the sun came up, Alara felt steady, ready. Saturday arrived with clear skies and cold wind. Adrian drove her to the law office himself, neither of them speaking much. What was there to say that hadn't already been said? The building was nondescript, professional, the kind of place where divorces and business deals happened with equal frequency. Adrian's lawyers were already there, set up in a conference room on the 3rd floor. He'll arrive in 10 minutes, one of them said. We've verified he's coming alone, no legal representation, as requested. The moment he becomes aggressive or threatening, we end the meeting and proceed with the full filing. Alara nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. Adrian pulled her aside. I'll be in the room next door. You won't see me, but I'll see and hear everything. If you need me, just say my name. I won't need you, but thank you. I know you won't, but I needed to say it anyway. He hesitated, then kissed her forehead. You've got this. Then he was gone, and Alara was alone in the conference room with Adrian's lawyers and her own racing thoughts. Victor arrived exactly on time. She heard his voice in the hallway, thanking someone for directions. Then the door opened and he walked in. He looked older, tired. The federal investigation was taking its toll. She could see it in the lines around his eyes, the way he held himself. But he was still Victor, tall, commanding, used to being the most powerful person in any room. His eyes found her, and something complicated crossed his face. Relief, anger, calculation, something that might have been actual emotion. Ilara. He said her name like a prayer or a curse. She couldn't tell which. You look different. I am different. He sat down across from her, ignoring the lawyers. I've spent 9 months looking for you. Do you have any idea what that's been like? The worry, the fear that something had happened to you? I know exactly what that's like. I lived with it for 3 years. The words landed like a slap. Victor's expression tightened. I don't know what you think you're doing here, he said, his voice dropping into that dangerous calm she remembered. But this little disappearing act ends now. You're coming home. We're going to get you proper help, and we're going to fix this marriage like adults. We're not fixing anything. We're ending it. She slid the divorce papers across the table. I'm filing for divorce. You can sign these now and make it simple, or you can contest it and make it very complicated. Your choice. Victor stared at the papers, then at her. You can't be serious. Completely serious. Ilara, you're not thinking clearly. Whoever's been influencing you, filling your head with ideas, no one's influencing me. I'm making my own choices. For the first time in years, I'm making my own choices. This is insane. You need help. Professional help. And I'm willing to get you that help, but you have to stop this nonsense and come home. She'd expected this, had prepared for it, but hearing it still made her angry. I'm not sick, Victor. I was never sick. You just needed me to believe I was so you could control me. She leaned forward. But I'm done being controlled. Sign the papers. And if I don't? His voice turned cold. What then? You think you can just walk away from 3 years of marriage? From everything I've given you? From the life we built? The life you built. I was just a decoration in it. She kept her voice steady. And yes, I can walk away. I already did. This is just making it legal. Victor's jaw clenched. She could see him calculating, trying to find an angle. You know about the conservatorship petition, he said. My lawyers tell me it's solid. If you won't come home voluntarily, I'll have you declared incompetent and brought home legally. That petition will fail. I'm employed, independent, demonstrably competent. You have no case. We'll see what a judge says. We won't, because if you push this, if you force me to fight you legally, I'll submit every piece of evidence I have about what you really are. The abuse, the money laundering, the shell companies, all of it. She saw his eyes widen slightly. I have recordings, Victor. From your office, from your house. Conversations you had thinking you were safe, and I have witnesses ready to testify about all of it. The color drained from his face. You're bluffing. Try me. Contest this divorce and find out. She pushed the papers closer. Or sign them, walk away, and we both move on with our lives. You avoid a public scandal and a federal case built on spousal testimony. I avoid a lengthy court battle. Everyone wins. This is blackmail. This is boundaries. I'm giving you a choice. Make it. Victor stared at her for a long moment. She could see him processing, realizing she wasn't the woman he'd married. Wasn't the woman he'd spent 3 years breaking down. She was someone else entirely, someone who'd learned his tactics and learned how to counter them. Who are you? He asked quietly. I'm the woman who got tired of being afraid. She stood. Sign the papers, Victor. It's over. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse, thought he'd escalate, become violent, force the situation to a breaking point. Then he picked up the pen and signed, just like that. 3 years of marriage ended with a signature and silence. I loved you, he said, not looking at her. No, you didn't. You loved owning me. There's a difference. She gathered the papers, handed them to the lawyer. Goodbye, Victor. She walked out of that conference room with her head high and her hands steady. Adrian was waiting in the hallway. He took one look at her face and pulled her into a hug that felt like safety and celebration at the same time. You did it, he said. I did it. She pulled back and she was crying, but from relief, not fear. It's over. It's actually over. It is. Completely. He wiped her tears with his thumb. How do you feel? Free. The word came out broken and whole at the same time. I feel free. The weeks that followed felt surreal. The divorce finalized quickly. Victor didn't contest anything, just signed where his lawyers told him to sign, and disappeared from her life as completely as she'd disappeared from his. The federal investigation into his business practices intensified, and Alara didn't feel even a little bit guilty about the evidence she'd provided. He'd built his empire on cruelty and corruption. She'd just documented it. She went back to her training center, to the women who were learning to reclaim space and power and choice. But now Adrian came with her, spending half his time in her city, half in his, building something that worked for both of them. You know people are going to find out eventually, Alara said one night, lying in his arms in her apartment above the coffee shop. About us. About who you are. Probably? Does that bother you? I don't know yet. I've spent so long trying to build something independent, something that's just mine. I don't want people to think I only succeeded because of you. Then we make sure they know the truth. That you built this yourself, that I was just, he paused, someone who believed in you when you were learning to believe in yourself. Is that what you were? Among other things. He kissed her temple. But Alara, anyone who spends 5 minutes watching you teach will know this is yours. The way you connect with those women, the way you understand exactly what they need, that's not something I could teach you. That's something you learned by surviving. She thought about the woman she'd been, hiding under a table, terrified and desperate. Thought about the woman she was now, teaching others to stand tall, building something that mattered. I used to think strength meant not being afraid, she said quietly. But that's not it, is it? Strength is being afraid and doing it anyway. Strength is choosing to fight for yourself even when it would be easier to give up. That's exactly what it is. Adrian's arms tightened around her. And you're the strongest person I know. That's a lie. You're much stronger. Different kinds of strength. Mine was learned through privilege and opportunity. Yours was forged through survival. I know which one I respect more. They lay in comfortable silence, and Alara thought about the path that had brought her here, the violence that had broken her, the stranger who'd saved her, the training that had rebuilt her, the choice to face her fear instead of running from it. She thought about the women in her classes, each carrying their own stories, their own scars, their own hard-won strength. She thought about what it meant to be free, really free, not just physically, but psychologically. Free to choose who to love, who to trust, who to be. I'm glad I ran into your room that night, she said. So am I. Though I'm even more glad you decided to stop running and start fighting. You taught me that. No, I just showed you that you already knew how. He shifted slightly to look at her. You saved yourself, Alara. I just held the door open. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was some combination of both. Her choice to take his hand, his choice to offer it, the work they'd both done to turn survival into something that looked like living. What mattered was this. She was here. She was free. She was building something that mattered, and she'd chosen it all herself. That, more than anything, was what freedom meant. Not the absence of fear, not the absence of pain, not even the absence of people who wanted to control you. Freedom was knowing that no matter what came, you had the strength to face it, the tools to fight back, the choice to walk away or stand your ground or burn it all down if that's what survival required. Freedom was understanding that you were enough, all by yourself, but that choosing connection didn't diminish that. Freedom was this moment, in this bed, with this man who'd helped her remember her own power without trying to own it. I love you, she said, and meant it. I love you too. He said it simply, without ceremony. Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at relationships. I work too much, I'm emotionally unavailable, and I have a concerning number of enemies. And I'm still learning how to trust people. I have nightmares sometimes, and I'll probably always flinch at loud noises. We're a perfect match. We really are. He kissed her, slow and certain. But Alara, if this ever stops working for you, if you ever need something different, I'll tell you. And we'll figure it out together, because that's what partners do. She smiled against his mouth. We're not trying to be perfect. We're just trying to be honest. I can do honest. I know. That's why I love you. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Alara didn't have nightmares. She dreamed, instead of the training center expanding, of more women finding their strength, of a future built not on fear, but on choice. She dreamed of fire, but the kind you walk into willingly, knowing it will transform you instead of destroy you. She dreamed of freedom, and when she woke up, she was living it. 6 months later, the training center had a waiting list of 300 women. Alara had hired 5 more instructors, expanded into a second location, and started consulting with shelters across the state about implementing similar programs. Adrian had quietly funded most of it, though they had agreed to keep his involvement private. The work had to be hers, had to stand on its own merit. Victor had disappeared into federal custody after his money laundering case went to trial. Alara didn't attend the sentencing. Didn't need to. She'd already moved on. She was in the gym one afternoon teaching a class to a group of women who'd just graduated from a domestic violence shelter, when one of them asked the question they all eventually asked. How did you do it? How did you go from being terrified to this? The woman gestured at Alara, at the confidence she carried, the way she moved through space like she owned it. Alara thought about how to answer, thought about Adrian's kitchen, the bruises, the training, the long road from victim to survivor to something that didn't need a label. I learned that fear is just information, she said finally. It tells you something's wrong, something's dangerous, something needs to change. But it doesn't tell you that you can't handle it. That's the lie we've been taught, that being afraid means we're too weak to fight. But fear and strength aren't opposites, they're partners. The fear tells you what matters enough to fight for. The strength gives you the tools to do it. But what if we're not strong enough? You are. You're here, aren't you? You survived whatever brought you to that shelter. You're taking this class instead of giving up. That's strength. You just have to learn how to recognize it in yourself. The woman nodded slowly, and Alara saw something shift in her expression. Recognition. Hope. The beginning of believing. She'd seen that shift hundreds of times now. It never got old. After class, she locked up and found Adrian waiting outside in his car. "Picking me up from work?" she asked, sliding into the passenger seat. "That's very domestic of you." "I'm trying a new thing, being attentive." He pulled into traffic. "How was class?" "Good. Hard. One of the women is still convinced she can't do it, can't be strong enough." "What did you tell her?" "That strength isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and showing up anyway." Wise words. "I learned from a very demanding teacher." She looked at him. "Where are we going? This isn't the way to my apartment." "I have something to show you." He drove with that calm certainty he brought to everything, navigating through the city until they reached a neighborhood Alara didn't recognize. He pulled up in front of a building, large, old, beautiful in that historic way that meant expensive. "What is this?" she asked. "Come see." He led her inside, up 2 flights of stairs, and unlocked a door to an apartment that was easily 3 times the size of her current place. Floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick, an actual office space that could fit a desk and bookshelves and still have room left over. "Adrian, what? It's yours. If you want it." He handed her the keys. "You've outgrown that studio above the coffee shop. You need more space, somewhere you can actually work without sitting on your bed with a laptop. And before you argue about accepting it, it's not a gift. It's an investment property I own that I'm offering to rent to you at exactly market rate. Market rate for this would be whatever you can afford, which I happen to know from your financial statements is exactly what I'm charging." She stared at him. "You're impossible. I've been told that before." He leaned against the doorframe. "But, Alara, you've built something real, something that's growing faster than you can keep up with. You need infrastructure to support that. This is infrastructure. Take it or don't, but at least admit it makes practical sense." He was right, as always. "Okay," she said, "but I'm paying rent, real rent, not fake Adrian math rent. We'll negotiate." He pushed off the doorframe, walked to where she stood by the windows. "I'm proud of you. I know I've said that before, but I mean it every time. What you've built, it matters. It matters because of what you taught me. No, it matters because you took what you learned and turned it into something that helps other people. That's all you, Alara." She kissed him, there, in the empty apartment that would become hers, with sunlight streaming through the windows and the future feeling like something she could actually touch. "Thank you," she said, "for all of it. The training, the support, the belief that I could be more than I was." You were always more. You just needed to remember. They stood there for a while, wrapped in each other, and the quiet understanding that they'd both survived things that should have broken them and somehow come out stronger on the other side. Later, sitting on the floor of the empty apartment eating takeout, Alara thought about the year that had passed since she'd run barefoot through marble hallways into Adrian's private office. She thought about the woman she'd been, terrified, small, convinced she was broken beyond repair. She thought about the woman she was now, strong, clear, building something that mattered. The distance between those two people felt immeasurable. But it wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was choice. Every day, every moment, choosing to stand instead of fold, choosing to fight instead of flee, choosing to believe in her own strength even when everything in her wanted to give up. That was the lesson she tried to teach her students, the truth she'd learned the hard way. You save yourself. Other people can help, can provide tools and training and support, but the actual saving, the actual transformation, that's work you do alone, in the quiet moments when no one's watching, when you decide that survival isn't enough anymore and you want to actually live. What are you thinking about? Adrian asked, watching her. How far I've come, how different everything is. Better different or just different? Better. Definitely better. She smiled. Though I have to say, hiding under your table was a terrible first impression. I don't know. It was memorable, and it led to this. He gestured between them. So I'd say it worked out. You're giving me too much credit. I was just desperate and scared. You were desperate and scared and smart enough to recognize opportunity when you saw it. That's more than most people manage. He set down his food, grew more serious. Alara, can I tell you something? Always. When you crawled under that table, I saw someone who'd given up, who'd been broken so completely they didn't even know how to ask for help properly. And I thought, here's someone who's going to disappoint me, who's going to take what I offer and then go right back to the person who hurt them, because that's what most people do. But I didn't. But you didn't. Instead, you got angry, and you got strong, and you turned yourself into someone I genuinely respect. That's rare. You're rare. The words settled warm in her chest. I think we're both rare, she said. Two people damaged enough to understand each other, strong enough to not need fixing, and smart enough to know that choosing connection isn't the same as choosing dependence. That's us. Damaged, strong, and occasionally smart. Occasionally? I have my moments of profound stupidity. So do you. We're works in progress. I can live with that. They finished their food as the sun set over the city, painting the empty apartment in shades of gold and amber. Tomorrow, Alara would move in, would turn this empty space into a home, would continue building her training center, teaching women to reclaim their power, living the life she'd fought so hard to create. But tonight, right now, she was just here, present, free. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Because freedom, she had learned, wasn't about never being afraid or hurt, musty or challenged. Freedom was about knowing that whatever came, you had the strength to face it, the choice to define your own terms, the power to walk away from anything that made you smaller. She'd run into the wrong room that night, desperate and bleeding. But it had turned out to be exactly the right room after all. Not because Adrian had saved her, but because he'd taught her how to save herself. And in learning that, she'd discovered something more valuable than safety, more powerful than protection, more lasting than any cage disguised as love. She'd discovered that she was enough. All by herself, completely on her own terms, she was enough. And she'd chosen to share that enoughness with someone who understood it, respected it, and never tried to diminish it. That was the real victory. Not escaping Victor, not building the training center, not even finding love again. The victory was choosing herself, over and over, in every moment that mattered. Everything else was just beautiful aftermath.